What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto was the child they threw away, but came back with a god's power? If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments, and also check the description box to original creator of this beautiful creation. They say experience is the best teacher, and they couldn't be more right. Freedom was something he had craved for since he was young, and he had experienced some level of it over the last 3 years. While he was still young, but with how his mind had matured and what he had experienced, he didn't classify himself as such anymore. At 17 years and counting, Naruto was nearly 6 feet tall, his baby fat had been lost, he was muscular but not bulky, just very fit with a strong athletic body. He let his blonde hair grow out as it had become spiky but kept well as it was covering his right eye. His whisker marks were more defined and he had changed his attire to a gray top and pants, with white bandages on his arms from his shoulder all the way to his wrist. Nobody would notice the bandages on his arms though, since they were covered by his top, arm guards and fingerless gloves. His top was a turtleneck, with a black vest over it and a medium-length blue coat that swayed behind him, while wearing black sandals. His pants were not too baggy, reaching down to his knee, and bandages were covering from his knee to his ankle. His clothing was comfortable and durable as he had ensured the material it was sewn from wouldn't tear or be cut easily. It was elastic and fireproof, although no one needed to know that, as it will come in handy. He was free from the expectations, stares, glares, the feeling of emptiness, even though he had put up a happy and satisfied smile. The smile was a mask to hide his loneliness, dullness, and some level of anger and spite. He felt that through hard work he could change the minds of the people, but later he realized that he wasn't living for himself, but for the village. A shinobi should live and die for his village, but for a Jinchuriki, a human sacrifice, the village should be treating him well, as a prince, and not hate him, because what he was holding back was far worse than any danger they could face. Or at the very least because he was not dispensable, for not just anyone could house a Biju. Instead he was hated, and to alleviate the hate he got attached to Sasuke Uchiha. His interest in Sakura was superficial, but in Sasuke it was more, and it was not romantic or anything, but brotherly attachment. He felt that they could understand each other considering their similar backgrounds, and they could be brothers. That in the end went to hell, and he nearly died for it with a Chidori to the chest. So 3 years away from all that was nice, enjoyable, somewhat lonely, but most important, productive. The fact was that the past 3 years of solitude and training had made him become who he was today, though there was still room for improvement, but as he was now, well, all will be revealed in due time, or at least what he was willing to reveal. He wouldn't allow complacency or pride, no, that would be foolish and a waste of time, but that didn't mean he wasn't proud of who he was now or what he could do, for no one would belittle him again, no one. He was strong, body and mind, he was confident in his power though not proud, and he was wiser and more skilled than ever, considering the sword he sheathed on his hip, for weren't just for show. Right now as he walked towards the village of the leaf with his coat swaying, his clothing and a focused facial expression, you would think he was a knight or returning from an arduous mission to give the report to his lord. Truly the only thing that identified him as a ninja was his headband with leaf insignia on it. But knights didn't exist in his book, and if they did he certainly wasn't one, nor was he returning from a mission. Well, sorta, but anyway, he would call his absence from the village just that. Leave of absence, nothing more nothing less, just that. Besides, he was back just to fulfill all righteousness, nothing more, so no need for elaborate entry or attracting attention. Will he be in trouble as he returns? Yeah, pretty much. Was it worth it? Yeah, it was. Will he make it through? Yeah, with no doubt. Will he be punished? Maybe, actually most likely. Will he apologize? No, not at all. Was he justified? Yes, he was. Did he care about others' opinion? Hardly. Was he worried? No. Why? Because he was Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, the future god of this world, and soon all will see. Then he disappeared. Scene change. You would think things would have changed in 3 years, but as he walked through the village, but he realized things were hardly different. Parents walked about with their children, the children played around, shop owners went about their business. Even the ninjas were doing their usual patrols and missions as he spotted some Junins and their teams going on with missions, and they all seemed to be at ease. Most likely D-rank missions, he thought, and shook his head. It would do him little to no good if he went down that train of thought. There were some things best not remembered. If he had to encounter things that triggered such thoughts or the main things themselves, he will deal with them accordingly. For now he would continue to look around in his henge. Forto the people he looked like a middle-aged man with an unassuming appearance. He wouldn't stand out, and the fact the ninjas couldn't notice or that he had entered the village without seeming to have attracted attention, it was annoying and pitiful. And they called themselves the strongest of the Big Five. No wonder the Nine Tails destroyed a lot and caught them unawares. It seemed their illusion of peace had made them complacent considering how the people ninja and civilian went about their lives with little care in the world. Or almost all the ninja as he sensed their approach. No scratch that, he had been discovered a while ago, they just didn't know his intentions so he supposed they watched, until now. I suppose they were tired of watching, or maybe they know who I am. Let's see. Ninja-san, please come with us, said an Anbu that just appeared with 3 others. Judging from their body posture and the ninja's tone of voice, he doubted they would leave without him, forcefully or not. Well, there was no need for trouble. Anbu and it seems they can detect my henge. This should be interesting, he thought. Very well, where to? He already had an idea though. The Anbu just placed his hands on his shoulder and disappeared. The others did so soon after, leaving the people around confused. Scene change. Just as he predicted, they ended up appearing in a room he was all too familiar with and before 2 individuals that he knew well as he could anyway. These individuals were in the middle of paperwork, where the dark-haired stood like a mother hen all focused and carefully watching the other woman like she would run away, and the blonde one sat with the work looking frustrated while grumbling. It was funny, but he wouldn't laugh though he was amused, just as he could feel the amusement of the Anbu team with him. Lady Tsunade. The leader Anbu addressed the blonde woman, of which the said woman and her companion looked up. This is an intruder we detected some minutes ago entering the village. Though he didn't seem suspicious, our detection unit noticed his abnormally large chakra reserves and notified us, and considering his use of henge to avoid detection, we concluded he was suspicious and brought him to you. Your orders. He was right, they had detected him. Perhaps they were not so complacent after all. A little lax and careless though considering what harm he could have brought in the few moments of freedom he was given. He wasn't trying to hide anyway, for if he wanted to they wouldn't have detected even with the village barrier. Yeah, he knew about it, and he was that confident in his stealth skills. What the illusion of peace can do to an era. Whoever you are, you either quite bold or foolish to enter my village as you did. So I give you one chance, drop the henge and spill who, what and why you are here, before I smash you to paste. Tsunade said with her killing intent to emphasize her point. It seemed like she wasn't in a good mood. Well, who would be with so much paperwork? He wasn't affected though, but he didn't want trouble. So he dropped the henge and the key, short for killing intent, instantly vanished. The look of shock on both women's faces and the feeling from the Anbu guards was well expected. After what seemed like hours, which was only seconds, Tsunade spoke in anger. Anbu. And they disappeared instantly, leaving just him behind. He had one thought on his mind. Interesting return indeed. There were a few ways Naruto could go about his current situation. He could cower before Tsunade and beg her. No, that's weakness and will give her reason to bully him, and considering her status as princess, she would. He could act indifferent and nonchalant. No, too risky, she would punch him and as durable as he was, it will hurt. Besides, that would only lead to more questions and he would have to give answers he didn't wish to. He could be understanding or at least act like he was, explain himself respectfully enough and apologize where required. Yeah, that makes sense, with the least consequence. Or he could just show who is boss and shut her up. Nah, that would be reckless and reckless wasn't his style anymore. How he survived his previous years as reckless baffled him. Yeah, it was Kishimoto that kept him alive since he was the main character of some anime series. Who was Kishimoto? He shook his head at that. Showing off would be reckless. As he took a good look at her face and body language and got a feel of her emotions, yes, he can sense emotions, yeah, third option it is. Lady Tsunade. He addressed her, and he must have said something right as her key vanished almost completely, almost. She blinked once, then again, even Shizune blinked at that. The Anbu hidden also felt surprised. After a brief moment of silence, she narrowed her eyes with such intensity that he would think she is trying to burn a giant hole in his head. That would be something. Genin Uzumaki Naruto, if you do not explain yourself well enough within the next 60 seconds, I will give you a beat down that could very well kill you if I am careless, she said in a sickly sweet voice that could melt ice and give lesser men heart attacks. He was unfazed, but he didn't want trouble, so he would do as she said. Besides, he kinda owed it to her. Kinda, but before he could speak, the other woman in the room spoke up. Lady Tsunade, I think you should calm down, as anger won't help in this situation. Let Naruto explain himself first and then you can act accordingly, said Shizune. She was always the calm one, a bit naive, but she was cool. Even she looked tensed considering the aura Tsunade was emitting, and that was saying something since she was around her the longest. He was still unfazed though. Are you being serious, Shizune? This boy has caused more trouble than he realizes, and you of all people should know how much stress he put on me, Jiraiya, and the village. His actions are for whatever are inexcusable, so don't you tell me to be calm, because my being calm was the reason behind all this, Tsunade said angrily. To an extent it was true, as she felt she allowed her motherly instinct to get the better of her with Naruto. The moment he was gone she should send hunter nin squads after instead of leaving his search with Jiraiya. The man was good enough, as it's not every day you get a Sannin to track someone, especially when such person was a master spy. When not being perverted of course, but as a Hokage she should have made more effort to find him, as Naruto was, as Danzo would put it, a crucial weapon, and she had failed in that regard, all because she was too calm. Now however, as he was here in front of her, she wouldn't be and won't be until she has gotten all her answers, even if she had to beat it out of him. Before Shizune could speak up, Naruto beat her to it. What do you wish to know, Lady Hokage? He kept his tone neutral. He didn't want to sound arrogant or mocking, and he didn't want to sound weak or scared either. Tsunade turned to him again as she studied him. Even Shizune, however tensed she was, studied him too. He was way too calm for their liking and more to Tsunade's irritation. Then Tsunade asked forcefully, "Where have you been?" "Traveling, as I never stayed in one place due to Jiraiya being on my tail. He was close to finding me on a few occasions, but I managed to evade him. So I just kept going from place to place, training as well as being able to see the world freely." He added the last part to get a point across. I felt caged. Tsunade had gotten the message, considering the slight spike with her emotions. She felt sympathy, but it was just for a moment. Then her anger returned, but she was a little calmer as he did have a point. Being outside the village gave him more freedom, but it was also more dangerous. How were you able to travel? Because as far as I am concerned you couldn't just have known your way overnight, and you had never been out of the village alone. So how did you navigate your way without getting caught or attracting attention? Tsunade wondered about that, because no matter how she thought about it, she just couldn't picture Naruto on his own and surviving this long alone. He must have help of sorts, right? It seemed she was quite suspicious, but he had prepared for that. It was simple. I used my shadow clones to scout while disguised in order to gather information. As you are aware, I can create quite a large amount of them, so using them as scouts with their ability to give feedback of memories when they dispel made it easier. As for staying hidden from enemies, I just made sure to keep a very low profile and use as little chakra as possible, and like I said, I hardly stayed in one place. If you are wondering how I got money to use, well, I did a few honest menial jobs when I could, and when I couldn't, I simply switched to ninja mode and stole as much as I could from people. Like the saying goes, old enough to kill, old enough to steal, I guess. He had prepared this explanation a long time ago, so reciting it while giving no room for error and convincingly was easy. Judging from the way Tsunade was looking at him, she was most likely trying to study him for lies, but he didn't spend 3 years away for nothing, and he had no intention of giving anything away. If she wasn't convinced, then at least his story made sense, and that was all that mattered. The worst that could happen would be she wanted him to have his mind searched and scanned by the Yamanaka, but he had a solution to that. Tsunade was really trying to study Naruto, and she wasn't getting anything from him, making her frustrated. He had really grown over the years, judging from the way he addressed her and how confident he spoke. The old Naruto wouldn't be able to look in the eye like this and speak when he knew he was in trouble or when she was angry. She could read the old Naruto like a book, but this version of him was completely closed off. The fact he said he had to resort to stealing and he didn't look remorseful about it made her worry about his state of mind. This Naruto wasn't the goofy kid of 3 years ago. He was acting like a veteran shinobi, one who was used to playing a game of words and while giving no loopholes, and that unnerved her. She wanted to believe he wasn't lying to her, but even if he wasn't telling her everything that she was sure of. So she decided to push for more information. What places did you go to? Which countries did you visit? And most important, how much of training did you engage in? I don't want any stories, just give me straightforward answers, she said in her Hokage voice. She needed to be sure he was telling the truth and being serious while giving no room for escape with words, and forcing him to spill details was the best way to go. Oh, only if she knew. I had gone through the land of lightning, grass, water, rice and even stone before moving towards the land of wind, then back here to the land of fire. And no, I wasn't discovered even though it was tricky to stay hidden, but I managed it. After all, if could escape Anbu ninjas when I was younger and more brash, then I should be able to hide myself even in plain sight. It was true and his explanation made sense. The escaping the Anbu part felt quite amusing, judging from the emotions he could feel from the Anbu squad hidden. Even Tsunade was amused by that, but she hid it well. Then he continued, I didn't really pay attention to the towns I visited, so I don't remember their names. As for my training, I improved on all aspects of my shinobi style, or as much as I could. I feel it's best I demonstrate than having to explain them, don't you think, Lady Tsunade? His training involved quite a lot of things and he wasn't gonna start blabbing them out. He would rather show her as much as he wished rather than speak. She just had to take the bait. Your explanation isn't exactly detailed, but they are reasonable. Just for protocol reasons though, you wouldn't mind if the intelligence unit evaluated your mind to be sure all the facts are accurate. No, she narrowed her eyes, studying him for his reaction. If he wasn't gonna give full details, which he most definitely wasn't, then maybe it could be pried out of him. She thought he may disagree, but he surprised her yet again with his next words. I have no problems with my mind being checked, but considering I am a Jinchuriki, would it be safe for anyone to evaluate my mind? Because the presence of the QB would most definitely affect my thoughts and I wouldn't want any Yamanaka to be harmed because of me. Yeah, he knew what her plan was by using the Yamanaka to pry info out of him, and while he wasn't afraid due to measures he took, he would rather avoid it. Besides, he wanted her to know that he knew her plan, or at least had an idea of it, and hopefully it would inspire guilt in her for not trusting him. This wasn't just shinobi protocol, she was actively trying to get info from him and also giving off the impression that she didn't trust him. The last part didn't bother him much, but he wanted it to bother her. Tsunade didn't know what to say to that, as he did have a point. Entering the mind of a Jinchuriki was a great risk to both the person entering and the Biju host. She could still order for such, but she didn't want to put Naruto in danger. The 3 years he spent away worried her greatly, as she thought she had lost him. Now that he was back, though very different, made her happy, and she didn't want to push him away with her distrust. He was one of the few family she had left. But she also had to act as Hokage as well. Family or not, there had to sanctioning for any ninja under her, and he was no exception. The elders wouldn't be happy if she just let him off. Danzo would use this as an opportunity to question her as leader, and might even be able to use this as a means to get his hands on Naruto. Over her dead body would that happen? Tsunade sighed as she spoke again. Naruto, I am gonna give you a chance to speak truthfully and openly, because I am sure you do realize that your actions have consequences, and if you want to lessen them, I will need to be honest with. Is there anything I need to know? This was the best she could do to get info out of him without giving off impression she didn't trust him. She only hoped he was honest with her. Naruto thought about her question for a moment, because even though he had anticipated her question, how much could he tell? He couldn't tell her everything. Heck, he couldn't tell her most things, so what would he tell her? At least she wasn't angry anymore, and that was something. He had to use his words very carefully. All I can say is that I have become stronger than ever these past 3 years, and my mentality has changed for the better. My journey has opened my eyes, and I have realized that if I want to change this world and be a great impact, I will need great power and a clearer, more realistic mindset, and those I have attained to an acceptable level. But rather than explain to you, I would rather show you, and then you can come to your own conclusion and do what is needed. The last part was true. By the time he revealed all he could do and learned, she would most definitely need to act. Whether for or against him, only time would tell. Tsunade wasn't exactly comfortable with his answer, as it wasn't straightforward, but she felt giving him a chance to prove himself wouldn't hurt. There were quite a lot of unknown variables about him, but she only hoped with time they would be revealed, and she would take measures to ensure they, on her terms, not the elders, not Danzo, and not even Naruto's, on hers alone. So she made her decision. Naruto Uzumaki, for your actions of leaving the village without permission you will be detained until further notice until your punishment and information given is sorted out. You will be escorted to the prison cells and remain there for now. I believe that isn't a problem with you? She half asked, half said. Surely he wouldn't refuse. No, I have no objections Lady Tsunade, he said impassively. A bit of prison time won't be bad, he expected it after all. Besides generally Konoha was a prison to him and he stayed here for 13 years. Anbu, a masked individual appeared. Take Naruto to Ibiki and tell him Naruto should be detained on my orders until further notice. No harm should come to him, and he shouldn't be allowed any visitors unless from me. Is that understood? Said Tsunade authoritatively. Yes Lady Tsunade. The male Anbu said. Then he placed his hand on Naruto and was about to disappear until Shizune spoke. She had quiet for a while and wished to brighten the tense atmosphere and hopefully make Naruto feel comfortable and welcomed, or as comfortable as he could be in this situation. It's nice to have you back Naruto-kun, she said with a small smile. She had missed him and hoped her statement would cheer him up. Naruto just nodded at her, and then they disappeared, and there was silence. Summon the council and elders, let them know it's urgent and get me Kakashi. Don't tell him the reason though, and let him know that if he is late, I will crush the very thing that makes him a man. Shizune could only shiver at the last part. Her master wasn't in a good mood and when she was like and gave out threats, she always meant them. If Kakashi was smart, he better show early for his and his manhood. How did things get this serious? Were her thoughts. Scene change. When he had left 3 years ago, aside from gaining strength he also wanted to be free. The fact that he had to return once again, and to be in such situation no less, it sucked. You know you could just break out and leave, it wouldn't be too hard for you anymore, spoke the all-familiar voice in his head. True, but it would leave more questions to be answered and more consequences that I rather not deal with, replied Naruto. Since when did you care about consequences? Even when you were a loud weak brat you had more balls than this. Now that you have the power you are just gonna conform. What would be the essence of all your training then if you were just gonna roll over like some rock? And create more problems that are unnecessary? No thanks. Power is important, but being smart is also as important. You can attest to the fact that if you were smarter then, you wouldn't be in this situation that you are in, being caged and all. Am I right Kurama? You didn't have to use that against me, I am just looking out for us. But have it your way then, just don't come complaining to me later, said the QB before cutting off connection. If Naruto wanted to play captive, it was his problem. The only thing he cared about was the action, nothing else, at least that's what he told himself. Naruto did have a point though, but he wouldn't admit it. The QB despite being the most powerful of the Biju, ended up in the same situation as the others, sealed and within several humans no less. Why? It was because he wasn't so smart. Madara Uchiha had found by tracking him due to the trail of destruction had caused at the time. If he had just stayed fully in isolation and minded his business, Madara would have most likely never found him. And when he was freed from control of the masked Uchiha by the 4th Hokage, he should have just left the village, but no, he just had to exact revenge and in the process get sealed again. Kurama may hate humans, but he was more angry at himself. With Kurama out of the equation, he could afford to think clearer. Doing as Kurama said wasn't so bad, but there were better ways to go about things and while he might need to improvise due to a few changes, this way was much better. He just needed a few things to be in place then he could show his true colors, as many were not gonna like it, but if things worked out, it would be fine. Being in a jail cell was just one of those things. At least he wasn't bound or covered in seals. Uzumaki, you have a visitor, shouted Ibiki. The man could be quite intimidating, judging from the aura Naruto felt off him. But he hadn't gotten an opportunity to test that since he was just locked up. It was most probably Tsunade's doing that prevented him from being interrogated and perhaps it was best that way. He's all yours, were the words Ibiki whispered to an individual, and with his advanced sensory abilities, Naruto knew who it was. What brings you here Kakashi? Are you here to break me out? Because if that's the case, I don't see things ending well for you. There was no amusement in the last part, it was just a fact. It wouldn't end well for both of us, but that's not why I am here. Besides, how did you know it was me? Asked Kakashi as he stood in front of Naruto's cell. He didn't want to believe it, but from what he could witness it was true. Naruto had changed, not just clothes-wise, which was something, but his character. The way he spoke those words and with indifference, and how calm he looked even while in a jail cell, proved that. The old Naruto would have blabbing by now and complaining, but he was used to that. Getting used to this Naruto would take some time, besides how much change had he made? He supposed he would soon discover them, but this and any other change would take some getting used to. "Would you believe me if I said I smelled your perfume?" he asked, once again indifferently. Kakashi just stared at him for a while, and then he spoke up. "No. Then that's how I sensed you," Naruto said calmly, his expression unreadable. Kakashi deadpanned at that. Didn't he just say no? Anyway, he shook his head at that, as he had a reason for coming over, and if he didn't fulfill, well, he didn't want to think about that. He loved his manhood after all. "I just came here to check on you, and also because Tsunade sent me here. But before I get to that, I want to know, how are you?" Naruto looked fine, but he still had to ask. He was his sensei after all. As well as one could be while locked up. Once again he replied impassively. It was really beginning to unnerve Kakashi. Before he said anything, Naruto cut him off. "I think it's best you just get straight to the point, Kakashi. Time to catch up can come later." Kakashi didn't miss how he was addressed, but he decided not to comment. Time to catch up and ask questions will come later. The rebuff did sting though. Tsunade wants you to know that while your actions were quite reckless and a danger to not only yourself, but the village, she was able to convince the council to restrict your punishment. You have been given freedom, but you won't be able to leave the village without strict escort and only on missions, and you won't get paid for any mission you undertake for an indefinite period. Once you agree to these terms, I can proceed to set you free and we can move on the next part, so do you agree? To Kakashi the terms were reasonable, although the not being paid indefinitely was quite troublesome, but it was better than having one's chakras sealed or being imprisoned, even worse, killed. He doubted she would let the last part happen, but the first two might not have been able to avoid. If Naruto was smarter now, he would accept the terms. Very well. So what's the next part? The punishment was manageable, at least he would still be able to leave the village, albeit with eyes on him, but he would manage. But he had eyes everywhere, so the restrictions wouldn't affect much. Kakashi, despite expecting Naruto to agree, couldn't help but ask. Just like that? Was it really that simple and easy? What were you expecting? Naruto asked. Not you to easily agree. Well, I agreed, so can you let me out so can move on to this next part of yours? This time Naruto's tone had a feel of irritation to it. Kakashi just sighed, but did as asked and opened the prison cell for Naruto to step out. Once Naruto was out and in front of him, he had a really good look at his appearance with the whole sharp and dark clothing as well as the serious look on his. The only thing that he could use to identify this person as Naruto was his blonde spiky hair and whisker marks, although now that he thought about it, Naruto kinda looked like his then sensei, Minato, who was also the fourth Hokage. Any doubts about him not being his son were washed away by this close-up look, and he was sure that many would begin to question Naruto's resemblance to his sensei from that day. Before he could venture further with his analysis, which took about a few seconds, Naruto spoke. If you are done checking me out, can we move on so I can get my sword? Wait, Naruto had a sword? That was new, as Tsunade didn't mention that to him. Sure, let's go. Then they both walked away from the cell and began their journey in silence out the prison. They did stop for Naruto to get his sword, which he tried to get a good look at but couldn't due to how quickly Naruto sealed it. Wait, sealed it? Where was the scroll? Where did you seal your sword, Naruto? He asked curiously as they continued their walk out of the prison. Naruto looked at him for a moment, then responded, in a seal on my wrist. What seal? He didn't see any seal, and besides, had Naruto gotten that good in Fuinjutsu already? Just a seal, Kakashi, a seal that any experienced seal user can make and place on any part of their body. That's something you should know. The way Naruto said the last part, you would think he was being condescending, but he wasn't, though he wanted it to seem that way. Over the years, Naruto had trained himself to have conversations with his clones and how to answer questions. Your speech pattern, tone, use of words and facial expression are weapons that can either chase away, cut off, provoke, instigate or promote a conversation. In this case he wanted to cut off Kakashi's questioning, so instead of saying it directly, he was using his words and how he put them to do just that. It seemed to work since Kakashi abruptly kept silent, and before he allowed him to have a comeback or ask another question, he asked his own. So what's the next part Tsunade had in store for me? Kakashi raised an eyebrow at his address of the Hokage. No more grandma huh, he's definitely changed way more than expected. I just hope he has skills back it up, and judging by the sword I would say it would be quite a surprise, he thought. Well, if Naruto wanted to be vague, then he would be too. Ma Naruto, what's the rush? Let's just take a walk and you will see for yourself, Kakashi said flippantly. Two can play that game. Unfortunately for him, Naruto could sense emotions and knew his endgame. Besides, he had an idea what the next part was. Judging from the gathering of familiar chakra signatures he could sense at a certain training ground. If it was what he thought, then it seems Tsunade must have taken the bait. He just hoped the people involved didn't disappoint, as that would be quite, well, disappointing. If it was, then he would have to give them a hard wake-up call. Scene change. What could Lady Tsunade ask all of us to come here for at this sunny hour? There are better things I could be doing, spoke Ino Yamanaka. She had grown in body over the years as well as mind, though it did appear she was still quite lacking in terms of seriousness. I suppose having a beauty sleep or taking care of flowers counts as something better, right? Said Kiba Inuzuka. It appears he was still quite brash and thought little before speaking. What was that dog breath? Asked Ino angrily while looking like she wanted to punch Kiba, who only made matters worse by responding with something stupid. It was the help of her teammate Choji and Kiba's teammate Shino that they able to prevent a fight, or in Kiba's case, a beatdown. Even Akamaru was keeping his distance from his partner, probably because the dog knew what was gonna happen. Shikamaru Nara just sighed. It wondered if Kiba and Ino would ever get along. Troublesome. Ino did have a good point though as regards all of the Konoha 12 being summoned. Well, 10 since Sasuke and Naruto weren't around. Speaking of the latter, he had pondered on his disappearance because he had his suspicions that Naruto had left the village on his own, even though it was claimed that Lord Jiraiya of the Sannin was with him. That was the official info, but he remembered overhearing his father speak with Inoichi, Ino's father, about Naruto leaving on his own and Jiraiya searching for him. They also talked about how Tsunade didn't want people to know that he had gone alone and how detrimental it would be if village knew their Jinchuriki was on the loose. He had searched on that word, and discovered those who were referred to as human sacrifices that served as containers for tailed beasts. That info was quite interesting, because that would mean Naruto was housing a tailed beast, and considering Konoha's history, there was only one of them could be housed, the Kyuubi. That meant Naruto the Kyuubi's container, but the question was why would he run away? Wisely he kept the info and thoughts to himself, as he wasn't even supposed to know any of that. It was kept secret for a reason. Yash, this gives an opportunity for us to show our flames of youth, spoke Rock Lee excitedly. No one was surprised at his outburst, it was a norm after all, but a certain teammate of his was always exasperated by it. The other was usually indifferent and occasionally amused. His teammate, Tenten, just sighed, while the other, Neji, just kept silent, but if one looked closely you could see his amusement. While I don't know about the air, the person paused, trying to figure out how to repeat the words said, like as if they were bitter to speak. Flames of youth thingy, she said lamely, but composed herself to speak further. But I do know that Lady Tsunade wouldn't waste our time, said Sakura confidently. She had grown over the years, and not just physically, but confidence and skill-wise. If she wanted to get Sasuke back and prove herself to Naruto once he returned from his training, then she had to get stronger. She did wonder about Naruto though, when was he gonna return? Then there was a gasp, and everyone turned in the direction, only to see Hinata with her Byakugan activated and shock on her face. What is it, Hinata? Asked Sakura worriedly. If Hinata acted that way, then something was up. It's Naruto-kun. He's back and headed this way, sputtering Hinata in shock. There was silence after that, very deathly silence, until a certain loud Inuzuka spoke up, saying the first thing that came to his mind. Why does he smell like trees? Nobody answered as they were all too shocked about Naruto's appearance to hear him, though the very person they were shocked to see narrowed his eyes slightly at Kiba, but Kiba was none wiser. It appeared Kiba discovered something he shouldn't. Naruto's pav. As Naruto walked towards the 10 young individuals with Kakashi and their respective senseis not too far behind, he couldn't help but feel disappointed. The feel and aura he got from his former colleagues was weak. It was only Lee and Neji that really stood out, though he wanted to engage the former than the latter. After all, he and Lee were both geniuses of hard work, though in his case now, smart work. The rest felt weak, though the likes of Hinata and Sakura he could feel some refinement and confidence. More of both in Sakura's case though, but didn't ponder on that. The bun-haired girl, Tenten was her name, looked skilled from her body posture, though quite lax and lacking in raw power. He remembered she was a weapons user and wondered how she would fare against him. Perhaps going against her wouldn't be so bad. He also wanted to see how much Hinata had improved, and as for Sakura, well, considering how fluent her chakra felt and how similar but much lesser to Tsunade's, well, it seemed she had trained under her. How much training, he didn't care so much. She might be his former teammate and possibly become his teammate once again. But she was not his friend. In fact, he had no friends in the village if at all. Then he heard what Kiba said with his very enhanced hearing, and narrowed his eyes slightly for a moment, then switched to impassive mode. Just because Kiba said he smelled like trees, didn't mean much as most wouldn't understand what that meant. Nobody would really pay attention to Kiba or what he apparently smelled off him. He decided to focus on the situation at hand, which was simple really. Tsunade had given him a challenge to fight all his friends at once, with he and their senseis serving as judges. If she thought she could push him to go all out, she was mistaken, because if he did, none of his so-called friends would survive. It wasn't arrogance, it was a fact, and he would prove it with a bit of his strength. A bit of a show wouldn't be too bad. He did have an agenda after all, and this would help him get closer to fulfilling it. So everyone, he heard Kakashi began. Apologies for calling you out here on short notice, but Lady Tsunade declared it was urgent, and so without wasting your time I will get to it. She wants all of you to take on Naruto here, who just returned from his training trip. This is not just to evaluate his skills, but also yours, so do your best. Then he turned to his fellow Junins. We are here to watch and observe, nothing more. So if you wish to greet your students, you could do it after, he said in his Junin voice, giving no room for questions. The Junins nodded, though the female reluctantly. The Lee look-alike just smiled, and the other male just frowned, but nodded, and soon after they all disappeared to a safe distance. Then Naruto just stared at his former classmates in silence. It was for quite a while as nobody said anything. So he decided to break the ice and get things started. Shall we begin? He said as he took off his long cape-like neck scarf and took a rigid posture. Come at me with the intent to kill or you lose, he said seriously. Playtime was over. The looks on their faces was amusing and disappointing. Overall pav. Everyone was speechless. Not only was their blonde-haired classmate back, but he looked completely different from how used to, and just physically judging the impassive look on his face. He felt very different, and what things more confusing were his words. Come at me with intent to kill, or you lose. Was he that confident? Did he really want them to try killing him? Would he hurt them if they didn't? These were the questions that plagued their minds, until once again Kiba spoke up. Is he serious? Why would we come at him to kill? Does he really think he can take us on? Asked Kiba incredulously of his fellow teammates, as the shock of seeing Naruto seemed to have been replaced by the annoyance concerning Naruto's words. Who did he think he was? No one answered, as most of them had the same thoughts on their mind, although as usual Shikamaru was in deep thought. Lady Tsunade wouldn't order all of us to go against Naruto without a good reason. But how much stronger could he have gotten? Is the fact that he might be a Jinchuriki a factor, or is he just confident in his own strength? These were the thoughts Shikamaru had about their current situation. He didn't want to underestimate Naruto, but also didn't want to overestimate his abilities, because in 3 years, a lot could have happened to Naruto, and judging by his posture and expression, he was sure Naruto was different. He just hoped his other teammates would take things seriously. He was about to give Ino, who seemed to have gotten over her shock and was looking at him, a signal to use their shadow mind possession jutsu, until suddenly, there was some pressure in the air and it was focused in Ino's direction. Then suddenly she fell down as she was unconscious. Ino! Yelled Choji as he ran to his teammate's side. Everyone surprised by her falling unconscious, but they did feel the pressure and it was coming from Naruto. Could he have knocked her out when she tried the mind walk jutsu? Thought Shikamaru, as it was quite possible, and judging from the fact that the pressure came off Naruto, it seemed it was most likely. If only Ino had waited for him. What did you do to her, you bastard? Yelled Kiba. It was a surprise he came to Ino's defense, but not of a surprise he would be the first to speak, considering his brash attitude. Faster than anyone could follow, Naruto was in front of Kiba, greatly shocking the boy, and with lightning speed, he punched Kiba in the gut, hard and knocked him unconscious. Akamaru barked loudly and was about to aid his partner, but he too was knocked out by a precision strike of Naruto. 2. Naruto was about to move again, until he felt something hold him, then he looked down to see a large shadow under his feet. So you were the first to act, huh, and use my distracted state against me. That was quite sharp of you, Shikamaru, but not enough, thought Naruto. Kagemane no Jutsu, Shadow Possession Jutsu, success, thought Shikamaru. Sorry Naruto, but you did say come at you kill. Although this won't kill, but the next one would definitely hurt, and then he shouted. Choji now. Expansion Fist Jutsu. Like I stated, some I will mention in English. Choji yelled as his hand became 3 times its regular size and was about to punch Naruto with enough force to knock him out, and then the unthinkable happened. There was a puff of smoke, and as the punch was about to connect, Shikamaru saw himself his Naruto's spot with the possession jutsu having deactivated, and Naruto was in his spot, but it was too late to escape. Shikamaru could only think of one thing before the punch connected and knocked him out. Troublesome, and then the punch connected, giving a resounding boom, knocking him out cold. It would be a surprise if Shikamaru didn't wake up with a heavy headache or concussion. Shikamaru, shouted Choji in surprise and panic. How did Before he could finish thought and get his bearings, Naruto appeared in front of him, and faster than he could react, Naruto punched him in the face, hard. Then with the momentum after his punch and that of Naruto's, he was blown away, only to land with a thud and knocked out cold. The Akamichis were quite durable people, so for Naruto to knock Choji out, he needed quite some force behind his hit, as that punch would have broken another person's face. 4. The remaining 6 could only look on in shock. Even Neji and Shino couldn't hide the surprise off their faces, though it was difficult to tell with Shino since. So will you take me seriously now, or should I still come at you? Naruto asked. He was quite disappointed with how the fight, if you could call it such, but still hoped for something better. At least Shikamaru and Choji did something. Don't underestimate us, Tenten shouted as she threw a couple of shuriken at him very quickly and precisely, but it was something he could dodge, which he easily did by twisting in the air considering how precise her throw was, and then she shouted. I got you now. That was when he noticed the ninja wire attached surrounding him, while he was still twisting airborne. So she knew the shuriken wouldn't hit me and banked on me dodging this way with how she threw them instead of with speed. Now that I am airborne, she could actually tangle me with the wire. Impressive, he thought. Then he spun so fast while in the air that he created a whirlwind of sorts and blew the wires away from him, of which after he landed on his feet and was about to dash towards her, until he heard Leaf's drop kick. With fast reactions, he disappeared from his position with a burst of speed and reappeared some distance away, and he was glad he did when he heard a crash sound at that spot. When he looked there, he saw that Lee's dropkick had made a crater on the ground. Impressive strength, and it seems Tenten isn't fazed much that I escaped from her grasp, perhaps annoyed and a bit surprised, but not really fazed. It's almost like she was expecting an attack from her teammate, something that Lee took up. Impressive teamwork, but what a bo, he couldn't finish that thought as with quick reactions once again, he moved out of the way as a strong force of wind flew past him. 8 trigrams air palm, Neji said silently as he appeared close to Naruto. Just like I thought, their teamwork is impressive. When one attacks, the other prepares a counter if the first misses, and if not for my speed, I would have been caught. Let's see what else they can do, but first I need to create some distance. Just as he landed away from them, he felt a presence and cursed his distracted state as the attack connected. It was Hinata that landed a Jayuken uppercut strike to his stomach, knocking the wind out of him slightly and sending him into the air. He was impressed by the fact that she was attacking him and was able to catch him off guard, and the strike of hers hurt him as he could feel a tenketsu closed. Also the fact that she was able to blend in with Team 9's teamwork considering she wasn't a part of them was impressive. Before he could do anything, Neji was in the air directly under him. It seemed Hinata's attack wasn't to take him down but a build-up to something else. 8 trigrams air palm. This time Neji's attack connected as he could feel the force of it, of which sent him higher into the air. Before he knew what was happening, Lee was upon him and drove a very hard drop kick onto Naruto. Lion combo drop kick, shouted Lee. With great speed and momentum, he He drove Naruto into the ground with a resounding crash that caused a crater and his heel buried in Naruto's gut, then he flipped away. "Yosh, Naruto-kun has been taken out," Lee shouted while smiling. Even though it was a fellow Leaf ninja and teammate, he had taken out 4 of his friends, and from what Kakashi said, this was a test of also their skills. So if he had to take out Naruto to prove more of his worth and protect his friends from getting hurt, then he would. No harm done, right? They were all friends here. Before he or any of his conscious teammates could celebrate, there was a puff of smoke, and then lying on the ground, beat up and unconscious, was Neji with Naruto nowhere to be found. What was the only thought Lee had before he felt hands on his feet and was dragged underground with only his head left seen. The speed at which that happened was so fast, and coupled with his shock, he couldn't react fast enough. Before he could get his bearings, his was kicked in the face so hard that, with the fact that his body was underground, making it difficult to spread the effect of the kick to other parts of his body, he couldn't help but succumb to unconsciousness. 6. Then he turned to the rest of his former colleagues and asked nonchalantly, "Who's next?" Tenten just stared in shock. The fact that her team's work was messed up, with both her teammates taken out so easily, especially Neji, and how Naruto asked that question, Tenten was pissed. So she did what anyone would do when angry. She unsealed her weapons scroll, summoned a dangerous-looking sharp scythe and charged at Naruto, despite the warnings of Hinata. She was gonna cut the blonde arrogant prick down to size, or so she thought. Naruto had to give it to the bun-haired weapon user. She was quite skilled with her weapon, and had nearly cut him on a few occasions with her strikes. She even surprised him when she released the chain of the scythe to extend the weapon's range, and due to the surprise, he got a small cut on his face. Truly, the girl was skilled, but it seemed her anger, especially since he was dodging all her attacks after that cut, blinded her. The main reason he asked the last question was to provoke either Tenten or Sakura to attack him out of anger, and separate them from Hinata and Shino, of which the latter he was keeping a good eye on. As for Sakura, he wasn't really surprised that she didn't attack, but pushed that thought to the back of his mind as he thought on Shino. So far the glasses-wearing boy had not made a move, and from the emotions he could sense from him, the boy was planning something. He had to dodge again another attempt to cut him by Tenten, who had taken the bait and decided it was time to put her down, as she was now fighting sloppily. She had allowed her anger get the better of her, and she would pay for that. So once she attacked again, instead of dodging, with a well-timed move and positioning of his hand, he caught the scythe's blade, surprising the girl. Then he used the momentum of her attack, drew her to him using its chain, and threw over his shoulder into the ground behind him with great force. As she hit the ground with a resounding thud, then he stomped her in the gut forcefully, cutting off her airflow and knocking her out. 7. Before he could react, once again Hinata caught him off guard, as it seemed she was waiting for the right moment to strike, and used his distraction of taking out Tenten against him. She said, "You are in my range," and she began. 2 palms, she hit 2 of his tenketsu with quick precision. 4 palms, 8 palms, 16 palms, 32 palms, she still kept going. 8 trigrams, 64 palms, she shouted. It was a bit of a surprise that she would use such an attack against her colleague and current crush, but judging from the way Naruto carried himself and he defeated the others, she knew she didn't stand a chance against him, so she took the opportunity she had when he was distracted and decided to finish him off completely. If he was able to shrug off Neji's 32 palms attack during Chunin exams with that strange chakra of his, she didn't want to risk it and let him recover. Hopefully this way, she could prove herself to her father when he hears of the news and Naruto, so he may notice her the way she wants. Before she could celebrate her victory, the Naruto in front of her dispelled in a puff of smoke, and the real Naruto appeared in front of her before she could blink, grabbing and lifting her by the throat. She tried to free herself, but increased the strength of his chokehold, almost rendering her unconscious. His strength was quite impressive to lift her up with one hand, because none of her teammates could do such. Before he shut off her air supply, he said the words that she was hoping to hear. "You have done well, Hinata," Naruto said with a very small smile. It was so hard to notice, but she did, and then she knew no more. Even though she failed to defeat him, he acknowledged her, and that was what mattered to her. She had proven herself. 8. Naruto-san, I suggest you surrender, spoke Shino suddenly. His plan was ready to be put in action. And why would I do that? He asked. He could feel Shino's confidence in that statement and wondered why. Because I have planted chakra-eating bugs on you, and if you do not, I will have to activate them to drain you, said Shino simply. He had been planting bugs on Naruto secretly while he was focused on his fights and was mostly successful when he fought Tenten and when he grabbed onto Hinata. Like Hinata, he knew he didn't stand a chance combating Naruto, who had taken out more than half of them with only a small cut, courtesy of Tenten and a few hits. The blonde was very fast, quick on his feet and hit hard, so he stayed on the sidelines and watched, waiting the right moment to strike by ensuring his bugs latched onto Naruto. Now was the time. What's the guarantee that I can't reach you faster than you can activate your bugs, and knock you out? Naruto asked, testing Shino's resolve. He had to give it to the boy though, his standing still and watching him fight was not for nothing. He had caught him off guard, so now he wanted to see if he could finish things. Shino had prepared for that, and once Naruto asked, he just activated his bugs. He was taking no chances, then he felt himself become so weak and was about to fall unconscious, then he noticed it. The bugs he thought he put on Naruto were on himself, and once he activated them, they were sucking his chakra, which was way smaller than Naruto's. Considering the fact that he was using chakra to control his bugs also added to how quickly he was drained. He didn't even know, as it took only a few seconds for him to be running on empty, and there was only one thought he had, Genjutsu. Then the world went dark. The world became clearer after Shino fell unconscious and Naruto was shown just standing in the same spot, looking on impassively. 9. Shino's attempt was smart and interesting, but not enough. He had planned for a sneak attack by Shino, that was why he put the Genjutsu in place. He may not be a Genjutsu master, but he could cast them well and quick enough, without anyone noticing. Besides, no one would expect him to use Genjutsu. The ignorance of people. Then he turned to the last remaining person, who was a little distance away with shock written on her face, and then he asked, "What now, Sakura?" Junin's Pav. The 4 Junins watching the fight had a mix of emotions considering the circumstances and actions before them, because what they saw was hardly a fight, but an outclassing of their students. Even the best of them like Neji, Shikamaru, Lee were all taken out, though the first 2 was with some difficulty. But still, for someone who was regarded as dead last and a loud brat with little potential to do this, it was shocking, awe-inspiring and also revealing. Their students needed more work, more training, because it was painfully obvious that if Naruto wanted to kill their students, he could have done so, and that worried them. The black-haired man with sideburns, Asuma Sarutobi, had a frown on his face, because not only was he disappointed in his students, Ino specifically for getting knocked out quite easily, but with the way Naruto fought, he questioned the boy's mentality. Even though he didn't really harm them, the way he fought proved not only his superiority, but the speed at which he took them down proved that the boy liked to end fights quickly and efficiently. It wasn't a bad thing, but the boy's indifference towards harming his fellow Konoha ninja made him look like an assassin, a person who didn't care who he hurt or even killed. Friend or foe didn't matter, only the end result and goal, and if you were too weak to stop him, such person would be crushed. That was the impression the boy gave off. This Naruto wasn't just a strong ninja, no, he was a deadly killer. Asuma was going to raise the topic when the time came, but for now he would watch. The bowl-cut-haired male with bushy eyebrows, Might Guy, had an unusually serious look on his face. While the boy's strength and speed were impressive, it was the vibe he got off Naruto that worried him. The whole fight up to that point reminded him of Kakashi when he was in Anbu. At that time Kakashi was willing to kill just about anybody so far he got the job done. That was the same feel he got off the boy, and while Kakashi was nonchalant, passive and a bit cold, Naruto was just purely impassive, indifferent and calculating. Every opponent he took down like a predator, one by one until they were all out. This wasn't a ninja that became strong to protect his people, this was one that was just strong and seemed to care little about anyone. His final assessment of the boy, Naruto, was dangerous, but he wouldn't conclude just yet, as there was still one more person left to be fought, as it was the boy's teammate. He would watch this carefully and seriously. His upbeat attitude didn't make him Junin, his observant and analytical skills were a part, so he would use them now. Kurenai Yuhi was initially surprised by Naruto's strength. How the boy become this strong in just 3 years baffled her. Fine, she had watched him beat Neji during the Chunin exams, but that was just by luck and his other chakra. She heard how he beat the one-tailed Jinchuriki and she accepted that the boy might just be strong, but this was quite another level. His speed, strength of his hits, confidence was something else, but eventually she became angry. Why? Well, because the boy was fighting quite aggressively with not just her students, but his colleagues, as they were all Konoha ninja. Fine, he had to impress them, so he could impress the Hokage with their assessment, but this beat down was too much. She decided to keep her thoughts to herself. Perhaps things were not as they seemed, because if she were to go with what she saw, she would say the boy didn't care about any of his friends considering how he took them out. She would keep on watching for now. Besides, how did he even use genjutsu, and when did he cast it on Shino? She would have to ask him after the fight. The last of the 4 Junins, the silver-haired ninja, Kakashi of the Sharingan, was in deep thought as he just watched his former student take down 9 of his colleagues in a few minutes and with little effort. In fact, the battle was just all about speed judging from what he had witnessed, and it made him remember a dead, blonde-haired sensei of his who had a penchant for ending battles quickly, but he shook off the thought. If he were to go down that road, well, he may just discover some truths that would most likely affect his relationship with Naruto negatively. Such would only add to his great sense of guilt, and he didn't want that. These were fellow Konoha shinobi and Naruto wasn't being merciful with them. Fine, he did tell them to come at him to kill, something which they were late to react to, but this was just pure outclassing of everyone. Naruto didn't even look remorseful or bothered, and he was sure his dead sensei wouldn't act the way Naruto did after defeating his classmates. He had prepared to witness changes in Naruto, but all of this was too much. First he took out Ino, who most likely had tried to use her mind walk jutsu on Naruto, who was somehow able to knock her out with a concentrated form of ki. Not many could escape the jutsu of the Yamanaka, but it seemed Naruto had found a way to turn it around. Then he somehow performed a replacement jutsu. No, it was a combination of that and probably the Shunshin no Jutsu, and he did it twice. In other words, high-speed replacement and switching without any hand signs while leaving an after-image of oneself was what Naruto did. Only extremely fast shinobi and those with high levels of chakra control could pull that off, so in other words Naruto was very fast judging from how he dodged most of their attacks, including Lee's and Neji's, who were fast ninjas. He must also have high-level chakra control, which wasn't easy considering how much chakra he had and had found a way to aid his speed effectively. How he became that fast, and the kind of training he would have undergone to attain it, that was a mystery, as only 2 shinobi from the Leaf could move that fast and they were dead. There was also the fact Naruto was quite calculating and, would he say, intelligent, because every move, action, attack were all done to ensure he came out on top. Nothing was wasted, and even when it seemed Hinata had him with her last attack, Naruto had created a clone so quickly and substituted himself with it, which distracted the girl enough for him to sneak up on her, since normally with her Byakugan sneak attacks were useless. You only saw such with highly experienced shinobi, geniuses of the highest caliber. Did Naruto become a genius in 3 years? What kind of training had he undergone to get him to this level? Tsunade said he had claimed he was always on the move, so how did he train to get this good? Or was he lying? These were the things Kakashi was trying to figure out. Come on, Naruto even used a freaking genjutsu on Shino. Fine, it wasn't high level, but it was enough to confuse the Chunin into draining himself dry with his attack, while thinking he had caught Naruto. This was a very different Naruto, and with his indifferent attitude, that made it more complicated. Naruto was like a predator, a deadly and smart predator who took any prey down effectively and quite brutally with little to no waste of effort. He wouldn't conclude just yet, but Kakashi was worried, and how Naruto handled Sakura would determine his thoughts on the matter. Back with Naruto. After Naruto asked the question and got no reply, he just stared at his former pink-haired teammate, and as impassive as his gaze was, some level of disappointment was expressed on his face. Fine, from what he had deduced, he believed that she was a medical ninja, something which Kakashi made mention of during their walk to the training. Kakashi had said that like as if it was an afterthought, but he knew that his former sensei just wanted to get a reaction out of him, but he had just kept quiet and stored that info for later. Medical ninjas normally don't do front lines, but as a student of Tsunade, something that Kakashi also confirmed, she would have been completely prohibited from engaging in front lines. Medical ninjas were lifesavers, and as such couldn't afford to die before their squad or teammates, So he understood why Sakura didn't attack. Yeah, he had done his research. Besides, the shock of seeing him, someone who was unskilled 3 years ago, decimate the others, it must have held her back. What chance did she have? If all she had learned was medical jutsu, then she would be a complete waste in battle. It was harsh, but it was the truth, and that was why he looked disappointed. Not only had she not attacked, she also didn't make attempt at healing anyone, so he didn't even know how good she was at healing. Probably above average being Tsunade's student and all. But with how she just looked, standing there in shock, it was pitiful. If this was how she wanted to get Sasuke back, she would die, because no doubt had he been training under Orochimaru, and if Sasuke was any better than he was skill-wise, she wouldn't stand a chance. Unless she used that thing he could sense from her. Yes, Naruto could sense and detect a person's strength level, and while her chakra reserve wasn't large, she did feel quite strong, literally. Her chakra was flowing quite fluently, and if she was truly a student of Tsunade, then she could probably do what her master could do, or at least some of it. So in order to get her to show him what she could really do, he had to snap her in place, and with her, the best way to do such was insult and mock her. Let's see if she still has that hot temper. Are you just gonna stand there, Sakura, or are you gonna come at me? He asked tauntingly and with a tone of disappointment. Sakura just frowned when he said that. Good, it seems I caught her attention. I don't want to believe that you are still that weak, useless girl that Sasuke never acknowledged, or are you? If he was right, then that statement should do the trick, and judging from the spike of anger he felt from her, it did. Yeah, she was livid, but instead of coming at him, she did something unexpected. She punched the ground so hard that the very earth shook, with debris flying around, and he lost his footing. Before he could get his bearings, he heard her yell. Don't underestimate, Chanero. Sakura shouted, and she moved so fast, faster than he had ever seen her move, as she ran towards him. Her fist encased in blue chakra, ready to cave his face in and would probably knock some teeth out if it connected, as well as knock him out. But just as it was about to hit him, he used what was left of his footing to raise and kick dirt into her face. Once he did, it did its job of distracting her and affected her aim at his face, shifting the trajectory of her punch slightly off target. It was enough for him, as he had gotten his footing and with great speed, rose his other leg to kick her face, and in the very same direction her punch was heading, using her momentum against her. Once the kick connected, her head was slammed into the ground with such force that there was a resounding boom as it caused a small crater and rose dust. By the time the dust cleared, the side Sakura's head could be seen lying inside the small crater. She was out cold, and by the time she would wake up, she would have a very annoying headache. She was a medical ninja after all, so she would live. 10. Naruto Uzumaki just stood silently watching Sakura. He, the once dead last of his class and least of his generation, had prevailed against 10 of his former mates, and had done so with just a small cut on his cheek and without using his sword or any ninjutsu. Once again he had beaten the odds, and proven that numbers were useless against him, but this time he wasn't happy or impressed, he was just disappointed. Sakura might have learned Tsunade's super strength and had tried catching him off guard with her application of it, but strength was nothing if not correctly applied, and she had failed in that regard. Everyone here, even Hinata, who he said had improved, still failed. Their numbers meant nothing, their skill and teamwork meant nothing, their craftiness meant nothing. Why? Because they lacked the power and resolve to back up their strength, because in the shinobi world, power was still the most important thing. How to use it was close second, but you needed the power first, and these people were lacking. If this defeat didn't wake them up, what was to come would, and it would be painful and without mercy. His train of thought was interrupted by the 4 presences he felt, and judging by their emotions, they weren't pleased, but he didn't care. Hopefully he had done enough to get what he wanted. Holding back was a pain. Doing all this was a pain, but he needed to be patient, as things wouldn't work out smoothly if he wasn't. Once the Junins arrived, the other 3 went to check up on their students, but Kakashi just stood beside him as he watched Sakura's unconscious body lying on the floor with her head in the crater. No words were exchanged between them for a while, until he broke the silence. Is there anything else, Kakashi? Because if there isn't, I would like to take my leave, Naruto said, but with neutrality instead of indifference. No point in giving the man reason to question his personality, as indifference at this point would only lead to such. He just crushed his former teammate after all. Kakashi was silent for a while, thinking wouldn't really solve this puzzle, so he asked. Was what you did to her necessary, Naruto? Couldn't you have toned things down with Sakura and the others? He asked quite neutrally, but Naruto could detect his anger, curiosity and unsurprisingly, anger. If Kakashi was angry with over this now, the man would most definitely not like what he would do in the future if things came down to it. He would think on that later, but he needed to answer the man and hopefully, placate him. This was a test, Kakashi. If you wanted them to take me seriously, then am I not allowed to do the same? You placed me against all 10 of them, and if I was gonna come out on top, I had to be efficient even if brutal, something you should be familiar with after all you did do that with Zabuza. Am I wrong? It was true, Kakashi was brutal with Zabuza, but that was the enemy, not his teammates or colleagues. Before he could point that out, Naruto interrupted him. Besides, I am doing them a favor by making them realize their need for getting stronger, because truly they seemed to get the impression that being a shinobi didn't require much strength if they had their teammate around to support. I am sure you witnessed how easy it was to take them out once I disrupted their teamwork, as most of them were sitting ducks. You may say teamwork is important, but individual strength matters just as much, something they seem lacking. All of this, Naruto said calmly. He believed in strength of a team, but individual strength was very important to him, because with what he wanted to become, he needed it in spades. If this people were to survive it, they needed it as well. Kakashi couldn't refute Naruto's words, as what he said was true. He did however need to figure something out from Naruto, so asked again. So you believe you are strong enough to be alone, is that what you are saying? Are you saying that those weaker than you don't matter, because with how you just took out Sakura, I would be inclined to believe that. So please enlighten me, Naruto? He asked forcefully, his annoyance evident in his voice. If he wanted answers, he needed to be forceful. Naruto hardly fought in this battle, he was just precise and fast. If he could win with just that, he wondered what he could really do at full strength. There was also his sword to consider, and how good Naruto was with it. He had defeated Tenten, a proficient weapons user, with some ease, so how good was he with his weapon? Most importantly, what was his mentality? He needed answers. I am not alone, Kakashi. Even if everyone abandons me, I will never be alone, only in death will that happen. As for Sakura, she is strong in her own right, and how she compares to me doesn't matter. If she can survive as a shinobi, then that's fine. I am not saying she shouldn't get stronger, but what use is strength if it can't keep you alive? All this Naruto said with meaning and somewhat vaguely. He didn't directly answer Kakashi's questions, but he did give him something to think about. Another person may not grasp all he had said, especially the first. He meant being a Jinchuriki, but he believed Kakashi would, and hopefully this would derail him off his questioning. Judging by Kakashi's emotions, it most likely worked. Before more questions could be asked, a voice spoke up. You could have been less brutal, Naruto. You did hurt a lot of people, said Kurenai, who walked towards them, and judging by her tone, he didn't need his emotion sensing to detect her anger. It was obvious she didn't like his method, especially with Hinata. I have to agree with her, you could have been less brutal, spoke Asuma gruffly. He still wasn't sure what to conclude about Naruto just yet, but he wasn't happy with him. You flames of youth are bright, Naruto-kun, but against your fellow colleagues and teammate, you could have toned things down, Guy said with a serious expression on his face. He encouraged hard work and strength, something that Naruto had, but there was a limit. His brutality against Sakura, even though the girl could have severely hurt him with her punch out of anger, could have been avoided if he didn't provoke her. Yes, he saw through Naruto's attempt to rile Sakura up, and while worthy of praise, it was unnecessary. Naruto just stared at all of them. Kakashi was quiet throughout all this as he sported a thoughtful look on his face. Hands in his pockets, single eye closed, yeah, the man was in deep thought. He continued to stare at the Junins, and after a while, he decided to placate them well enough. No need to have 3 influential Junins against him. I apologize for my brutality. My years away and of training have made me somewhat of a perfectionist with my fights, so I tend to end them as quickly as possible and with some brutality if need be. I suppose I got carried away, and I apologize. That were his words, and he spoke them with some sense of sincerity. He may not really mean the apology, but he was sincere about being a perfectionist, so he used that feeling to cover up for his other words. It seemed they bought it, though Kakashi just remained as he was, and after a terse moment of silence, Kakashi surprisingly spoke up. It's not us that need the apology, but your colleagues. When they wake up, do the needful, and next time, just be more cautious. said Kakashi in his Junin voice. His tone was quite neutral with an edge of seriousness, so Naruto just nodded. He wasn't afraid, but no need for trouble. Naruto did a one-hand seal and 5 clones appeared, startling the other 3 Junin. Where had that come from? The 3 thought. Naruto had just performed a one-hand seal to produce 5 clones, so yeah, their confusion was expected. He shook his head at that and spoke up. The clones will help gather all of them and take them to the infirmary. He paused for effect, and spoke again. Just see this as my making amends for my attitude. He didn't exactly mean the last part, but who cares? His actions spoke well enough. We appreciate the clones, Naruto, but you can leave as you are no longer needed, said Kakashi dismissively. Very well, and once again please accept my apology, Naruto said to the now composed Junins. He nodded at Kakashi and then gave his clones a look of instruction, which said, you know what to do. He was about to go when Kurenai shouted. Wait, he turned towards her inquisitively, but refrained from speaking. She should be the one to talk since she stopped him. The genjutsu you used on Shino, how did you go about it? She asked curiously, having forgotten most of her anger. Immediately after, he answered. I had placed him in the genjutsu from the moment I took out Ino. I guessed he would try something like he did, so I used the brief distraction when Ino fell unconscious to cast it discreetly, and with how subtle it was, and the information about me not being good at the art, I didn't expect anyone to detect it, even the Hyugas. The last part worked perfectly, because even with Hinata being close to him, she couldn't detect it because it was subtle and nobody knew he could cast genjutsu. Sometimes, using your opponent's knowledge against them was all there is to it, and coupled with the right timing or moment, you were good to go. Anything else? He asked. No, you can go, she replied. Then he walked towards his long neck scarf he had dropped, put it back on and began to leave the training ground. He believed he had done and said enough, and it was now up to the Junins to decide if he passed or failed. Besides, he had somewhere to be, so he disappeared. No need to walk through the village and deal with the villagers' looks. He didn't even register the fact that he had left 4 Junins behind in deep thought. Scene change. Sakura didn't know what to think of her teammate. As of 3 years ago she could predict him because he was so open and loud, but now as she escorted him to the Hokage Tower, she didn't know what to think. Just yesterday he had beaten 9 of her colleagues and her soundly. When she woke up, aside from the serious headache she was quite surprised, a little angry, mostly with herself for losing her temper and losing to Naruto, but aside from all that, she was hurt. How Naruto could be so cruel as to use her anger against her as well as hit her as hard as he did, hurt her. Fine, she shouldn't have lost her cool, but his words were cruel. How could he call her weak after all this time? Fine, she was weak before, but over the years she had become better and stronger, so why belittle her? Most importantly, why use Sasuke against her? She knew Sasuke would be stronger now, but Naruto sounded like he didn't care about him and even her in case Sasuke ever hurt her. She wasn't foolish to believe Sasuke couldn't do just that, but it felt like Naruto didn't care. Why? Had the past 3 years changed him that much? What kind of person was he now? How strong had he gotten? Was he stronger than she witnessed the day before? The last part actually made her shiver. If Naruto was any stronger than that, well, she didn't want to think too much on it. But her defeat really made her question herself. Would she ever be able to catch up to him, to Sasuke? Would she be strong enough to face Sasuke when the time came? Would she be strong enough to fight Naruto if he ever went rogue? With the way Naruto was and the unknown variables surrounding him, the last part was a possibility. She only hoped it didn't come to that. She had already lost one teammate, she didn't want to lose another, even if he was different. Now as they walked to the Hokage Tower, in silence, it was unnerving. She didn't know what to say or whether to say anything, so she just kept quiet, but man did the silence irritate her. When she had arrived at his apartment, she expected many things, but a place as clean as his, considering the building's outward appearance and what she expected of him, well, it was surprising. Everything was arranged properly, the little furniture he had were clean, his small kitchen was clean, and for a small apartment, Naruto had done a pretty good job. Whether he was always this clean or he just cleaned his apartment when he returned she didn't know, but she guessed it was the latter, considering he could spam shadow clones like it was easy. Now as they were walking, she did notice how people were looking at him. They were giving him strange looks. At first they were surprised to see him, but after a while she realized that it was almost like they were trying to figure out something about him and his appearance. What it was, she didn't know, although his appearance was quite eye-catching. He was dressed in all black, his top was long sleeves and he had his long blue neck scarf on, and it looked almost like a cape, since it reached almost his feet. He even had a sword, and from what she remembered when they fought he didn't have it on him. If he was that good, then she didn't know how good he would be with a sword, but she guessed above average. All in all, he looked like an Anbu, or better yet, an assassin, and all that remained was for him to start wearing a mask. Nah, she kinda like his face uncovered, no baby fat, it was firm, and his hair, while spiky blonde, was arranged well with his defined whisker marks, gave him an alluring and mysterious look. Alluring? Where had that come from? Was she attracted to him? Well, who could blame her? He was attractive, not as Sasuke but attractive enough. God, if she was thinking like this, she didn't know how Ino would think, even worse act. She had to get herself together. Hokage's office. Hearing that Naruto was much stronger than he was 3 years ago made her happy, but it being told by 3 of her top Junin that Naruto needed psychological evaluation and testing worried her. According to Asuma, Kurenai and Guy's report, this was their unanimous conclusion. Very strong, efficient and intelligent. No move is made without purpose and very little openings to pounce on. He is quite skilled, and while not much of taijutsu was shown, he is skilled enough in the art, but mostly his speed stands out, of which it is quite possible he is faster than he has shown. Genjutsu was effective enough that even our genjutsu specialist wasn't aware when he used it, and as for ninjutsu, not much could be said considering he hardly used it. Though his effective usage of shadow clones and the replacement jutsu are to be applauded. Overall skill level, definitely Junin. Recommendations. His attitude, while mature enough, definitely needs polishing in terms of people skills, and his indifference, coupled with his brutal efficiency at fighting, need evaluation and correction. Threat level, flight risk. That was their report on him, and what made matters worse was what Kakashi said to her privately. I don't trust this version of Naruto. There are a lot of unknown variables, and while he could be manipulated, I believe that isn't the case, because he seems quite aware of his actions, and how he speaks also proves this, at least to me. I believe he is hiding a lot from us, but in order not push him away or make matters worse, I suggest you give him missions while under strict surveillance, preferably outside the village, and see how he responds. In other words, don't give him reason to mistrust you while giving him opportunity to show his true colors out in the open. That was what Kakashi was suggesting. The very first words he uttered bothered her. Was he insinuating that this Naruto was a fake, a fraud? Was the real Naruto still alive, or was this actually Naruto, but just different? These were her thoughts. Kakashi did have a point, as it was possible Naruto was being manipulated, but she was sure that he was most definitely hiding things from them. No one got this strong and changed this much in 3 years just like that. The use of shadow clones to train has crossed her mind, as he could spam it like there was no tomorrow, and with their memory feedback it would shorten training time significantly. But if he was any stronger than this, then there had to something else involved, and also the drastic if not darker change to his attitude was suspicious. Unless he had been pretending all those times in the past, 3 years while living alone couldn't have made Naruto as he was just like that. She would be a fool to believe such, and whatever it is he was hiding, she only hoped it wasn't detrimental to the village. He was entitled to secrets as a ninja, but as a village asset, there could be no secrets whatsoever, but she would give him benefit of the doubt. It may be biased, but unlike how she reacted when he disappeared, she would be more proactive now. She would follow Kakashi's advice. In fact, she had the perfect mission to test him, though on the high-risk side, he had proven he could handle himself, and besides she won't send him alone. The council, especially the elders and Danzo, might throw a fit, the latter trying to undermine her authority, but she would deal with them. Naruto was her priority, and she wouldn't lose him. He was her only family left after all. There was a knock on the door. Come in, she said. Lady Tsunade, Naruto and Sakura are here, Shizune said. Send them in, was her reply. There was some worry on her face, but Shizune replied professionally. Very well, Lady Tsunade. She had informed Shizune of her plan, and while the woman didn't disagree, she was still worried, and understandably so. There was silence for a while until the door opened once more. First she noticed Sakura who greeted her, and then there was Naruto dressed in all black who just nodded at her. The way he looked, especially with his sword and impassive expression, made him seem like a very deadly assassin, or at the very least, Anbu. It was quite strange, but she shook off the thought, and she schooled her expression to neutrality. This was not the time to show worry. There was another knock on the door, and it was opened almost immediately as a mop of silver hair was visible. Lady Tsunade greeted Kakashi. Then he turned to the others. Naruto, Sakura, he greeted nonchalantly. Though there was a bit of warmth in his greeting to Sakura, something Naruto didn't miss. His arrival on time and how he looked at Naruto didn't depict nonchalance, something Sakura missed as she spoke up with a smile. Kakashi-sensei, it's good to see you. How have you been? She asked. Well, you know, here and there, replied Kakashi. Sakura just shook her head at the vague reply. What else should she have expected? Then she heard him ask, how's your head? It's fine, though it hurts a little, she said. If not because of her prowess as a medic, she would have been in more pain by now. She turned to Naruto to see his reaction, but nothing. He just looked the same, but he did ask. Something on my face? Before Sakura could reply, Tsunade interrupted while clearing her throat. You can have your reunion later, now I have something to discuss with you three, she said, watching their expressions. As usual, Kakashi looked nonchalant, Sakura looked a bit nervous, and Naruto looked quite curious, judging from his lone eyebrow raised. How he could walk around with one eye covered by his hair she would never know. What did he even see in the look? At least he wasn't looking impassive at the moment. The three of you will come back together and form Team 7 along with an extra person to replace Sasuke. She paused to look at Sakura, who had tensed up slightly, and then continued. For now, Sakura relaxed at that. As for who this person is, it will be revealed to you tomorrow while you go on your first official mission. Since reforming, she noticed Sakura's excited but puzzled look at her last statement. She didn't need to look at Kakashi, because he was aware of her plans, but Naruto just continued to look and listen curiously. After a brief pause, she continued. This mission is of utmost importance, as not only will our shinobi's strength be tested, but the might of the village. The mission is for you to assist the rebels in their civil war against the 4th Mizukage. The mission details are in this scroll. She held up a scroll and handed it to Kakashi. As it is nothing less than a rank mission, going to S rank, but I will advise you stick to purely assistance and not front lines, especially you Sakura, being the medic of the team. She said the last part a bit proudly, after all the girl was a product of her tutelage. What's the time duration? Asked Kakashi after going through the scroll. 3 months, nothing more than that. If the war is taking longer despite your assistance, then you pull out. But just to be safe, I will add an experienced Enbu guard to your team in case things go a bit south. The last part was a possibility, because even though there was no war, she couldn't exactly trust the hidden mist with her shinobi, considering their reputation of being bloody and backstabbing. You leave by tomorrow morning, as you will meet both your new teammate and the Enbu guard. Questions? Sakura nodded as she asked a bit nervously. Why send our team, Lady Tsunade? Why not send the others with us, or a more experienced team? It was nice to know the Hokage trusted and valued her team, but still it was scary going to a place so far and very deadly. Because of all teams, we are the most capable. Kakashi is a former Anbu and skilled Junin. His tactical intelligence would prove most useful. You are the best medic ninja the village aside from the Hokage and Shizune. And I am a powerhouse, with lots of chakra and firepower at my disposal. This new member would most likely be skilled enough and knowledgeable about where we are going, as the Hokage won't give us a useless teammate, so yeah, we are the best for this, answered Naruto surprisingly. There was no excitement in his tone, it was just plain, but also simple. She didn't expect him to speak, and so accurately as his points did make sense, but even as they made sense, she still felt afraid. The mission was way out of her comfort zone, but she pushed her fear down, as this was an opportunity to prove herself. So yeah, she would agree, though she did wonder what Naruto meant by him being firepower, but she would find out eventually. Very well, Lady Tsunade. I have no more questions, said Sakura with a bit more confidence, especially with the fact that Naruto called her the best medic. It may not have been a direct compliment, but she would take it. In that case, you are dismissed. Naruto, you stay behind, said Tsunade, with the last part sounding more like an order than a request. Before leaving the room, Sakura looked at him and then Tsunade nervously, before she left, closing the door behind her. Kakashi didn't even react when he left, but that was unimportant. The man had his own problems to deal with, and currently ones that revolved around Naruto. But that was his business, as Naruto didn't care. So it was just Naruto and Tsunade, as the two blondes just stared at each other, one looking impassive, while the other looking neutral and serious. After a tense moment of silence, Tsunade spoke up. You know there are hardly people that can keep up with a staring contest with me, and you who are just a brat, and a genin at that can do that just fine. She was trying to rile him up, or at the very least, get a reaction out of him, but she got nothing but a raised eyebrow and she sighed mentally at that. Anyway, with that aside, there are a few things I want you to know. First is that the council are pretty much not in your favor. While that isn't much of an issue, you would have to tread carefully from henceforth and do what I say, because it is only my support that is preventing you from being punished severely, she said seriously. If not for her, Naruto would be in chains for the rest of his life. I appreciate your support so far, Lady Tsunade, and my apologies for putting you in such situation. Naruto didn't care about the council and their politics, but it wouldn't hurt to show appreciation to her. She wasn't really expecting him to thank or even apologize, but at least he seemed to be taking this seriously, or so she hoped. Though the whole calling her name with respect would take some getting used to. Your decision to leave on your own was quite reckless, as anything could have happened to you, but I am sure you know that, and I hope such won't repeat itself again, she asked sternly and with narrowed eyes. She needed to be sure she had his compliance and cooperation. Naruto just simply nodded, as he couldn't make that promise. He would eventually leave, and unlike last time, he won't be coming back. But for now, he would play his role as a Konoha shinobi. She wasn't fully satisfied with his nod, but she would take it. Second thing is that Jiraiya would be meeting up with you at some point before your mission in the mist ends. I have sent word of your return, but due to how busy he is, he can only meet up with you over there. I believe that's not a problem, she asked, gauging his reaction carefully. She didn't know how Naruto saw her teammate, but she hoped they could be on good terms. I have no problems with the arrangement or with seeing him. He would most likely be angry, but I will handle things when it gets to that point. You have little to worry about on my part. He had no problems with the man, but he didn't regret abandoning him for solo training. The man wouldn't have taught him as much as he knew now, in fact even a quarter of what he could do now, he wouldn't be able to do if he had stayed with him. He was just glad the toads didn't rat him out, as they were truly trustworthy summons. If there was any problem, it would be from Jiraiya's end. She felt there was more to the last statement he made, but she put that aside for now. Thirdly, this mission upon its completion will help you significantly as regards getting within the good graces of the council and would paint a better picture of you with the shinobi and the village. As much as making a Junin would be within my power, due to your actions and the council's distrust, I cannot promote you, or even give you the monetary reward for this mission when you complete it. However, if you succeed in this by playing a key role, I could very much promote you as well as lift off some of the limitations placed on you, but it's as I said, you need to play a key role. And in what sense do you mean key role? He asked curiously, though he already knew the answer. By having active impact in winning the war and possibly playing a diplomatic role by improving relations with the Mist and its future Mizukage. Diplomacy is more of Kakashi's thing. Are you willing to trust me that at this point to succeed with that? Can you even trust me to play as much of an active role as you require of me? He asked, but this time, one could hear the seriousness in his voice. Did Tsunade really trust him that much, or was she testing him? It was most likely the latter, but he needed to be sure. She would foolish to just trust him like that. I trust that you would not disobey your Hokage, and that you would do what is necessary for your village, she replied with authority and seriousness. All trace of familiarity gone. Naruto just stared at her, and then he replied. Very well. He could read her attempt of covering up her intentions. He knew she had suspicions regarding him, and with his changed personality, she didn't trust him so much as there were a lot of questions she needed answers to. This mission and what she expects of him is just a ploy to get him to fill some of the holes he had created and try to bind him to the village by using him as a form of poster boy and making him a crucial part of the village system. She didn't want him to leave again as he was a flight risk, so she wanted to bound him, but he didn't mind, as when the time came, he would do what he wants regardless of whoever stood in his way. All right then, she said less seriously. As a bonus for completing this mission, a very important secret will be revealed to you upon your return and promotion, as it is only when you become a Junin that you will be privy to such secret. I already know what it is, he thought, but he would play the clueless ninja, so he raised an eyebrow at the statement, indicating his curiosity. Complete the mission and only then will you find out, hopefully as a Junin, she said the last part like it was a probability. She could very well promote him now and tell him the secret. Screw the council and their thoughts as she was Hokage, but she needed to give him an extra bone and hope he bites. With his curious gaze, it seems he will bite. Very well, Lady Hokage. Will that be all? Lady Hokage, She shook her head at that, then she stood up and walked towards him. Once she was close enough, she stared at him for a while and then, she hugged him with as much warmth in her action as she could express to him. He may treat her differently, but she still cared for him. It's good to have you back, Naruto. I missed you, she said softly. She didn't need to be his Hokage right now and he didn't need to be her shinobi. Right now, they were family and she wanted to express that to him, regardless of her suspicion or slight doubt. She just hoped it would make him express himself better. It took a while for Naruto to respond, but eventually he hugged her back with one arm. He may plan to eventually break his bonds with the village, but at least for now, he wanted to enjoy just a little of it with the only woman that cared for him in the village. And while he may deny it, he cared for this woman quite well. It was just unfortunate that she couldn't follow him on his path, and he doubted that she would even want to. But for now, he wouldn't think on it, as when the time came, he would do what was necessary. After all, gods couldn't live as mortals, they had to be above them and he would be above her and everyone else. The journey towards the mist was pretty quiet. After a quick meeting at the village gates, they departed at a fast pace towards their destination, namely the border between the land of fire and water. They had to take a big boat, of which the captain had prematurely been informed of their arrival and took them across with little fuss. So far, they had spent about half a day crossing the ocean, and since it was night time, they probably wouldn't make it until early morning at their current pace. While they could have attempted to cross the ocean while running with chakra, not all of them would be able to manage it. Kakashi may be rusty, but he just might be able to make it over halfway even with his lower chakra reserves while running at full speed. The two Anbu could probably manage the same as well, Sakura though wouldn't. While not underestimating her ability, she hadn't been on missions that required a large amount of stamina, and though her chakra control was top-notch, she needed larger reserves. Naruto on the other hand was the oddball, because despite his abnormally large reserves and recent improvement in ability, no one really knew what he could do. Hopefully this mission would give a better idea of that, but it wouldn't be surprising if he could cross the distance in record time with little to no fatigue. That would be saying something, considering how big the ocean was. Back to their current situation on the boat, everyone was resting as they needed to keep whatever energy they had left for the mission ahead because it would most likely be as stressful, and they also needed to regain strength as well. Besides, it was night time and they were in the middle of the sea. There was no threat at the moment. But once again Naruto proved he was an oddball, as he was currently wide awake, standing at the edge of the boat and staring at the sky with a calm and thoughtful expression. While he didn't look like an epitome of serenity at the moment, he sure didn't look violent or deadly, just at peace. To those who would see him at this point, they would say he was in deep thought, and they wouldn't be far off the mark, because at that moment, he was having a conversation in his mind, precisely with the QB. You sure about this, Kit? Once you reveal what you have in mind, there is no going back, said the QB. Are you expecting me to get cold feet, Kurama? Asked Naruto. You are a human, and you humans tend to lose your balls when it comes to seeing important stuff like this till the end. I have witnessed it time and time again. Not all humans lose their balls as you say, Kurama, and even with how many who do, I am more of an exception and you know it. After all, you wouldn't have given me your name if I was weak like the rest of them. It was true, the QB was the most prideful of the Biju about its name, as he felt only those he deemed worthy should know it. Naruto was worthy enough, but he wouldn't tell him that. Besides, the brat wasn't like most humans, and from what he had witnessed of his host's life, the boy had some big balls. Don't get too ahead of yourself, Kit, you are still just a human after all. Just make sure you don't chicken out, as that would be quite disappointing. After that, Kurama kept silent, probably signaling the end of the conversation. There was one thing Kurama couldn't deny, and that was with his host, things were hardly boring. Even when he was bratty, loud and unskilled, things were pretty interesting, a little irritating, but interesting. In fact, with his recent change in perspective and personality, things had gotten a lot more so, and considering what Naruto had planned with the upcoming events, things would only become more so. Even though the QB had gone silent, Naruto STLL spoke. I am not your means of entertainment, Kurama, and there is nothing entertaining in what is to come. As to whether it will be good or bad, that will be for the people to decide. Regardless, things would still push through, no matter who likes it or not, answered Naruto confidently. He didn't come this far just to fall short, whether due to fear, hesitation or consideration for others. Everything and everyone would have to fall in line once he was done. Those who couldn't handle things would simply fade away, and those who defied things would be beaten to submission or crushed. Either way he won and things would change. Things were definitely gonna change, and most likely in a bad way. But if you want something entirely different and turning out to be the best, you gotta go through the fire, or in his case, through the entire elemental nations. Going through the fire would seem like an easier task under the circumstances. Before the conversation could go on, a new presence made itself known, and it was a woman, precisely, their purple-haired Anbu escort. This was Neiko, the Anbu captain and the best Kenjutsu specialist in the Leaf. Naruto wasn't so sure about the last part as he had yet to challenge her, and he was no slouch or amateur in that regard. While he wouldn't call himself a master of Kenjutsu as there was still room for improvement, but he was pretty good. He was well versed in Kenjutsu theory, but practically he still needed more experience, as he had only spared with hordes of his clones, which were just versions of himself. Though he did give them instruction to fight with intent to kill and fought them in large numbers, they were still a part of him. He needed to fight someone who was completely different, someone he couldn't predict, someone to push him. If he didn't get to fight this woman, then he was sure he would get a challenge in the mist. Shouldn't you be resting, Naruto-san? We have a big mission ahead, and even with your stamina, I believe it would be best you rest, said the woman professionally. She may have been familiar with the kid a little, but that was a long time ago, and with his recent change in attitude, she felt she needed to be professional. Unless there was need for otherwise, which she doubted. She just hoped he would act professionally as well. I could say the same for you, Neiko-san, was his swift reply. He had sensed the woman while she tried to rest, but she never slept as something was bothering her. From what he felt from her, she felt hurtful, stressed and somewhat sad emotions. He supposed being in the Anbu was factor in that regard, but he also felt it was more than that, as the most defining emotions she felt were regret and loss. It wasn't his problem anyway, as he wasn't a therapist or psychologist. Being able to sense people's emotions to the degree he could was a pain most times, but he had learned to deal with it. It was a part of him that wouldn't be going away anytime soon, and besides, it was pretty useful. In a world of ninjas, being able to read people perfectly was necessary, and when applied well, it would be a saving grace. He was curious about the woman nonetheless. After all, she was a guardian of his when he was a kid. But regardless, I insist you rest, she said just as swiftly and a little authoritatively, something that Naruto noticed. He was tempted to raise his eyebrow at her tone but refrained from it. Her tone of authority was probably due to her status as Anbu captain, and while she worked in the shadows, she still had authority over most ninjas in the village, and that included everyone on this mission, even Kakashi, despite the man having been a former Anbu captain. He had no issues with following orders, but he would play around for a bit and see where it takes him. Getting to know her might prove more useful than considered. With the 3 years I have been away, Neiko-san, I have built up quite the stamina, so denying myself a few hours of rest won't hurt if at all. But I suppose being in Anbu you could relate to that, right, Neiko-san? Anbu hardly ever slept for long, and while on missions he doubted they slept at all. Besides, despite the fact the others were resting, he knew they were still awake and alert. Even Sakura, who he expected to sleep, was awake, even though she most likely felt the urge to sleep. Tsunade must have really drilled the girl if she had improved this much. But she needed to improve much more if she wanted to survive what was to come. This isn't about me, it's about you, and despite whatever you had done in the 3 years you were away, I still insist you rest, she said a little more forcefully. She was the leader of this mission, so she wouldn't budge on this matter, not because of her pride or authority, but because it was necessary. They all needed to be well rested for the mission ahead, as she didn't want anyone slacking. Perhaps this kid hadn't matured enough after all to be professional to his superiors. She was about to speak again until Naruto cut her off. Tell me, Neko-san, just out of curiosity, why did the Hokage involve Tenzo-san on this mission? His tone expressed curiosity, but he was anything but curious, as the answer was quite obvious to him. He just wanted to hear what Neko would say, of which the woman in question had a pensive and wary expression behind her mask. Where did this come from? That's Lady Hokage's decision to make, and for whatever reason she chose him, a typical evasive answer. I know that, but I do want to know your thoughts on the matter. You are the leader of this mission, and while that should make you trustworthy enough, I still wish to know if I can trust you enough. Answering this question with as much truth will help in that regard. He didn't mean the last part, because sometimes telling the truth wasn't enough to make someone trust you, and no matter how truthful one was to him, if he didn't trust, then that was that. Are you giving me a condition for your trust, Naruto-san? Because it sure sounds like it, Neko asked challengingly. Why the boy would ask such a question now, she wasn't sure, but the fact that he asked it, well, it made her very wary and suspicious. It also hurt her pride a little. Who did he think he was to question her like this? I am only curious, Neko-san. Her feelings on the matter were obvious to him, even without his emotions sensing ability. Well, there is no reason for you to be, just follow orders and things will be alright. If you have any questions about this, then go straight to the Hokage when we get back, because you won't get anything from asking me. This time, aside from speaking with authority, she spoke with a tone of finality, giving no room for more questioning. She knew the answer to his question, but it wasn't her place to tell him, nor did he need to know. What she didn't fully know was why the Hokage specifically ordered for his team and not too long after his return to the village. Was the woman comfortable enough to let someone who was a great flight risk leave the village? She decided not to think on that, but she did have to keep an eye on him though. This questioning of his was quite suspicious. Naruto just kept staring ahead, deep in thought, and after a few seconds of silence, he turned to the woman and spoke. Very well, Neko-san, thanks for your time. After that, he began walking into the cabin of the ship, but before going further, he spoke again. For a Jinchuriki, freedom is everything, and as much as I am a servant of the village, my freedom is still of great importance. I may be under your command, but you do not control me. I will follow your lead, and it's not because you are the leader of this mission, but because I respect you. After all, you did keep watch over me while I was kid. But make no mistake, the moment I lose trust in you, Neko-san, you lose a follower and my respect. Do keep that in mind. After saying that, he kept on walking, leaving the woman to her thoughts. Yeah, Neko would have something else to think about that night. Scene break. After getting to their destination, they had been dropped off quietly, something that was needed considering they were on foreign grounds and possibly enemy territory. There wasn't much light since it was still early in the day, and the surrounding was completely covered in mist. It shouldn't have been much of a surprise since it was the territory of the hidden mist, but still, did it have to be literal? The mist wasn't natural though, as it was laced with traces of chakra, though it was in small amounts and spread widely, and that made it difficult to discover by sensors and much more difficult to navigate. Fortunately for the team, Kakashi had some familiarity with the area, though it had been a while, but most importantly, the purple-haired Anbu, who was also in charge of this mission, knew where to go due to information given by the Hokage, courtesy of a mist informant. They also had an ace up their sleeve as regards sensory aspect, but the four of them were none wiser. Naruto had no intention of revealing his high-level sensory abilities. Even though there was need, he wouldn't reveal it, as everyone on this mission was capable of taking care of themselves without it, and with what he was gonna reveal, he needed an ace up his sleeve. Alright, everyone, listen up, began Neko as the five were walking through the mist, following her lead, quietly of course. Aside from Naruto's conversation with her the night before, the team had hardly spoken to one another, with their longest conversation, more like introduction, being the one they had shortly before leaving the leaf. There was a brief introduction amongst themselves at that point, and since then, that was it. The silence might have not been so bad, but at the moment in unknown and possible enemy territory, instructions needed to pass along. We are currently in enemy's territory and anything is possible, but the aim is get through this as quietly, quickly and effectively as we can. We are currently towards our ally, but even though that's what we were made to believe, let's just keep our guard up, ears open, and eyes peeled. We stick together unless there is need for otherwise, and once we approach our prospective allies, I expect us to be professional and sharp. There should be no hostility at any point unless I give the order, even when you feel it's needed. I am the leader of this mission and I expect complete compliance, understood? She asked with a tone that made you know she meant business. This was her Anbu captain mode. There was no response by anyone as they needed to be quiet, but she believed they got the message. Don't act recklessly and follow instructions, was the unspoken message. Tenzo was just walking as calm as ever, and though one couldn't see his face, if you knew what to look for, you could see he was tense, though he hid it well. Kakashi was pretty calm with no porn book in sight showing how serious he was at the moment. He was pretty quiet, just walking as calmly as you would expect from an experienced Junin as himself, but just like Tenzo, he was also tense. Naruto was just staring ahead, having an impassive facial expression, but Sakura on the other hand was nervous and also scared. This was her first time this far from the leaf and on a mission of this caliber, which from the gravity of the situation and seriousness was probably S rank. If the A-ranked mission at the wave was scary, this was even more so, but unlike then, she could defend herself and contribute reasonably. So she swallowed the lump in her throat and composed herself, body and mind. Her training with Lady Tsunade won't be put to shame, as she was no longer a little girl, but a mature kunoichi. She had to act like one. She felt a hand on her shoulder and turned to witness Kakashi giving an eye smile, most probably trying to ease her tension and reassure her. It did work as she became a little more relaxed and schooled her expression into a determined one. She did glance at Naruto though and noticed that her teammate wasn't even bothered or afraid, as his posture was just relaxed. Too relaxed even, for a mission like this. Before now, she would have scolded him, but at the moment, especially after how he had decimated her and the others, she refrained from doing so. He had proven that he could take care of himself, and as much as she didn't want to think about it, it was possible that he was more capable than he had revealed. It was a scary thought, but for now, she had to focus on the mission at hand. Besides, she was surrounded by 3 experienced ninjas and her surprisingly but pretty powerful teammate. The fact that she was the only med nin on the team made her a priority to be kept safe and protected, so she had little to fear, right? A sudden halt by the captain stopped their movement and jolted her out of her thoughts. She really shouldn't be spacing out in a situation like that. All of a sudden the environment became tense, and the mist surrounding them only made it worse. Sakura didn't know how to feel right now, because if were her younger self, she would no doubt be frightened. But at that point, well, she was frightened, and the only thing keeping her in check was the fact that the people with her on the mission were all capable, strong and experienced. That's not to say she wasn't any of these, but she had to admit that the others were ahead of her in that regard, even Naruto. How much her teammate gained in terms of experience, she wasn't sure, but traveling alongside Jiraiya of the Sannin, there was no doubt that he would have gained enough experience. She didn't know how long they stood still, but to her, it felt like hours. I spot movement up ahead. Get ready for anything as it could be an enemy, but do not act until give the word, ordered Neko. Kakashi-san, I propose a diamond formation, requested Tenzo, who for the first time since their departure, spoke up for all to hear. It may have been hard to notice, but there was some sense of familiarity in the man's tone towards the silver-haired Jonin, and also some respect. Naruto definitely picked up on it, but chose not to comment. Hi, Tenzo, you cover our rear. Sakura, you are in the middle. I will cover left while Naruto you cover right, with Neko remaining front, ordered Kakashi. This was not just Junin Kakashi, it was former Anbu Kakashi talking. All persons followed suit and took their respective positions, except Neko, who was already in front and remained there. She had not drawn her sword, so none of them drew their weapon, but everyone was tense and focused, ready to strike at moment's notice. Sakura assumed that being the only medic nin, she was top priority, so they had to keep her alive. That's why she was in the middle of the formation, and it helped ease some of her nervousness. Hopefully there wouldn't be a fight. A few individuals appeared a little ahead of them, and as they drew closer, their features were more noticeable and also their numbers. They were all male with about 5 in total, and once they were close enough, it was discovered they had no headbands, though attire did show mist culture. Their lack of headbands would make sense since they were not mist shinobi, but part of the rebellion, but that was just at face value. Looks could be deceiving after all, something that all the Konoha shinobi could attest to due to one experience or the other. The group of men stopped a few feet before them, and judging from their expressions and countenance, they meant business. The fact that Neko hadn't drawn her sword meant that they weren't a threat just yet. But that could change in a few moments, because people, especially ninjas, could be quite unpredictable. "Identify yourselves," stated an older man with an eye patch covering his right eye. Judging from his commanding tone of voice, and how his fellow men stood behind him, it seemed he was their leader. "We are just passing shinobi who are hunting," answered Neko. "I doubt passing shinobi that hunts would have two Anbu with them, and so far away from home if I might add," replied the man. The Konoha headband was a dead giveaway that these people were foreign ninjas. If they wanted to be more covert, then they should have removed their headbands. Unless that wasn't their plan. Sakura felt uncomfortable and her anxiety began to spike as a result of the man's response. What if these people turned out to be enemies? "It's true we are far from home, but it's not every day one gets to clean house," said Neko. The last statement was a code of sorts, and she hoped the man would pick up on it, because if he didn't, well, there would be trouble. "That's true, a house can be quite difficult to clean and stressful to do every day." The man looked at them for a little longer, studying their expressions as well as counting their numbers. Just 5 shinobi, well, that wasn't impressive, but Konoha had a lot of quality, so perhaps these were quality shinobi. He didn't feel any negativity from them, just the need caution, and understandably so. Though the blonde-haired kid was quite unnerving with that emotionless look he had. There was something odd about that one. Then he turned eyes to the silver-haired individual, and immediately recognized him. I suppose having the likes of Kakashi no Sharingan and his fellow ninja to assist in cleaning the house wouldn't be so bad. Yep, the code had been understood and accepted, though the skepticism in the man's tone didn't go unnoticed. "Then we are willing to help," answered Kakashi on behalf of Neko. Since the man had addressed him by name, he felt it was best he responded on behalf of the team. He doubted Neko would be upset with him, after all they were both co-leaders. He also didn't want her to react negatively to the man's assumed skepticism, as he was sure she also noticed it. The man in question simply nodded and spoke again. "Follow me, and do so quietly." Then he and his fellow ninja began walking away. They were not there to be bodyguards, they were there to be escorts, and so the foreign ninja would have to keep up and follow them. Neko just spoke without turning her around. "Keep the formation until we reach our destination. Also keep your guard up at all times as we follow them quietly." As soon as she finished, she was on the move, with the rest of them following suit. None of the others may have noticed it, but Kakashi did. The leader of the rebel group had stared at Naruto for a little longer than he did the rest of them, and while it wasn't a bad thing, it had him thinking. Naruto was way too calm for the situation, and while that also wasn't a bad thing, it was a little concerning. It was almost as if his former student didn't view this situation or mission as a threat, or something enough to warrant him to be tense. As calm as he, Neko and Tenzo were, there was still tension and caution. Sakura, despite her determined look, was pretty nervous. But with Naruto, there was nothing to show the boy was afraid, and it seemed the rebel leader had noticed it as well, probably making the man stare at the blonde interestingly. But at that moment, he decided to keep his thoughts to himself, as there was a mission they had to get done. Unknown to him, this wasn't the only mission, as the person who he thought of also had his agenda and mission to fulfill, one that would cause a great shift in the balance of power amongst the Great Five Nations. Scene change. Starting a rebellion in a country that ruled rigidly was difficult, but keeping the rebellion ongoing was even harder. The odds were definitely stacked against this rebellion, as it was pretty obvious considering their current situation. Not only were supplies lacking, but their camp was getting rather overpopulated with the constant inflow of refugees, with most of them being civilians who were probably rendered homeless due to the ongoing civil war. It was really a pitiful situation. But the Konoha ninjas weren't there to make things better, they were there to end the war as quick as possible, if it could be ended, of course. Judging from the rebellion's current situation, if the war dragged on further, then they would be crushed. It was the Leaf Ninjas' duty to ensure it didn't get to that. After all, there was a lot to gain if the rebellion won the war, especially with the prospective change of Mist leadership. It was most likely that it would be the rebels' leader that would take over the mantle of leadership, unexpectedly, since the person in question had 2 bloodlines. The fact that she was a woman, on the other hand, was the most surprising, at least to most of the group, because a certain blonde teammate of theirs already knew the details. Not that he would let them know. Well, if it isn't our saviors from the Leaf, how generous of your leader to send just 4 additions to our great army of rebels, were the sweet words of the rebel leader, and it was obvious to everyone around that she was being sarcastic, though her men who were present couldn't help but agree with her as regards the sarcasm. If the Leaf didn't want to help, then they should have said no, instead of sending a small cell of ninjas to aid them. It was insulting, and Mei Terumi was gonna give it back to them in her own way, of course. If the Leaf were gonna be so confident to pull a stunt like this, then she would throw it right back at them, tenfold if she could. Every one of the Leaf ninjas had varying reactions. Neko wasn't too happy with the reception, Tenzo was uncomfortable and a little sheepish. Kakashi just narrowed his eyes, but wasn't angry, just rather a little irritated. Sakura was anxious and felt a little insulted. Naruto just remained impassive, an expression he had from the moment he entered into the rebel camp. Despite her anger at the fact that she, her team and village had been insulted, Neko was able to compose herself and was quite glad for her face mask, because the expression she had was pretty furious. Though she did avoid accidentally leaking any ki in the process. She was meant to be diplomatic after all. I believe you are mistaken, Mei-san, because we are a group of 5 instead of 4, which you might have assumed. It was quite irritating for Neko to be apologetic and polite when she had just been insulted, but for her fellow teammates and village, she would. Besides, pissing off an already irritated cage-level shinobi and future Mizukage wasn't something Neko wanted to happen. She just hoped her team would keep in check and not do or say anything stupid. She also hoped the woman wouldn't continue to say stuff like this, if not then they were gonna have a big problem. Oh, the children only count as half ninja, but I mean no disrespect, so I count them as one. Though I have to say, the fact that you know my name proves that you are well informed. If it weren't for the children you brought, I would have taken you a little more seriously. But, oh well, Naruto didn't care much, whether about the insult or her beauty. Neko and Sakura did, but the former was more concerned about the woman's attitude than beauty. She was about to speak again, but Kakashi beat her to it. You shouldn't underestimate our ninja, Mei-san. Our village does have a specialty for developing youths of great power, stated Kakashi. There was no insult in that statement, just stating of a fact. Besides, throwing a round of insults would get them nowhere, and he was too composed for that, something that Neko didn't really seem to have. She was still the leader nonetheless, but that didn't mean he couldn't engage in some diplomacy where he felt was needed. I will be sure to keep that in mind, Kakashi-san. The woman's smile was almost convincing. It only made Neko more annoyed. Before Neko could speak, Kakashi once again interrupted. I believe you need some help as regards medical expertise, judging from the look we had of the camp when we came in. I recommend our very own medic, who is an apprentice of our Hokage, who also is the world's greatest medic. This is her apprentice, Sakura Haruno. I agree with Kakashi-san, as you do seem to be in a dire need of medical help, added Neko with a bit of a jab at the woman. Sakura, despite how nervous she looked, quickly composed herself and hardened her features. She would not allow her ability to be doubted, especially in a foreign village. Mei might be proud woman, but even she couldn't deny the merit the copy ninja had made. They needed the medical help, and if the pink-haired girl was as skilled as expected, then the help would be appreciated. But of course, she did have to keep up an appearance of strength and pride for her ninjas. Are you positive she is skilled as you say, as I wouldn't want my medics to have someone to... She glanced at the girl in question. Hold them back, I assure you I won't, Mei-san. You have my word, Sakura said with a determined look. Very well, I will give you the benefit of the doubt, but I won't appreciate you holding us back or bossing around my ninja, Mei said with narrowed eyes. You have nothing to worry about, and besides, Tenzo here will be escorting her so as to keep things in check, replied Neko. She wasn't sending Tenzo for that purpose really, but rather to protect Sakura. After all, they were in foreign grounds, and they couldn't let their guard down. Sakura was also pretty high priority, being their only medic. Mei simply motioned to one of her ninja. Escort these 2 Leaf ninjas to the medic bay, and ensure no harm comes to them and no one questions them. Hi, Lady Mei, the ninja answered respectfully. She might be a woman, but she was still their leader. Besides, being boiled alive wasn't something any of her men wanted. Once Sakura and Tenzo left, with the latter giving a subtle motion to Neiko, probably Anbu code stuff, something that Kakashi picked up since he was a former Anbu. Unfortunately, Naruto also picked it up, and once he decided the message, he discovered it was about him. As suspected, Tenzo was here specifically to keep him in check, precisely to keep the QB in check. It was unneeded really, but he did understand the reasoning behind it. After all, he was a wild card Jinchuriki, with a lot of ambiguity surrounding him. "You have been awfully quiet, young one," said Mei while referring to Naruto. "Has the cat got your tongue, or are you too afraid to speak up?" Before Kakashi or Neiko could speak on his behalf, he replied, "I am here to simply follow orders, nothing more, nothing less." He didn't bother to elaborate because he didn't need to really. The response elicited a frown from the woman, but it for a moment. "You shouldn't be so serious at your age, young man. I would hate for your handsome face to get wrinkles because of that." As she said that, her disarming smile was already in place, covering up her true thoughts. The truth was that the blonde kid made her, well, wary. She couldn't really explain it, but that was what she felt, and it was an annoying feeling. A cough by Kakashi brought the auburn-haired woman's attention back to the matter at hand, as he believed it was best they focused on that. Besides, he didn't want himself or the team to get into trouble due to Naruto's, well, peculiar attitude. "Can you share with us the current status of the rebellion and what areas we could help?" requested Neiko, her status as commander being reinforced by her tone. She did give a subtle glance at Kakashi, expressing her gratitude for taking care of things. How the silver-haired Junin could even detect such was a mystery, consider she had her mask on. Perhaps his being a former Anbu captain helped in that regard. With a very serious expression on her face, Mei began. "For starters, we currently have an estimated population of about 1,500. That includes shinobi, civilians, men, women and children." "How many are shinobi?" requested Neiko. "About 1,000, both bloodline and regular." "How many shinobi does the Mizukage have?" Mei looked to her next in command for an answer. One which he gave in a firm tone. "About 10,000 inches." Silence. "Do you have any means to make up the numbers of your current shinobi? As I believe you do have a plan for that, am I right?" asked Kakashi. It was best he did the questioning at this point, judging from the current disposition of Neiko, which would probably lead to her acting out or responding too harshly. Though he couldn't see her face, he knew she was very unhappy with what she just heard, maybe even pissed. He wouldn't blame her, as with the current information, this mission, this war, it was suicidal if things remained as they were, as the chances were 10 to 1 in favor of the Mizukage. "As a matter of fact we do. Albeit it's difficult to execute at the moment," replied Mei, cutting off whatever angry response her second-in-command or her men would give to the copy ninja's question. Ao and the other men wisely kept quiet, albeit hesitantly. One of the men wanted to speak up, but a sharp look from her cut him off. It was like he was questioning their ability, though respectfully on his part. That didn't make it any less annoying, but she could put that aside. Her men, not so much, but they would have to. Pride was useless when losing a war, and they were losing. "How difficult is this plan?" After a moment's thought, Mei replied. "It depends really on how you see it, but over the last few months, several of our men have been captured, and those who wanted to join the rebellion, serving as potential recruits, were also captured as well. That includes bloodline users and regular shinobi, but the issue isn't about them being captured, it's about freeing them. It has proven a very difficult task for us, as more of our men get captured in the attempt or even killed," continued Ao grimly. Taking time to process this, Neiko asked the most important question. "I suppose where they are being held is proving to be the difficult, I suppose?" "Yes, you are right. They are held in the most secure prison the Mist has to offer, and therein lies the problem," admitted Mei. "You are referring to the gulag, am I correct?" asked Kakashi, his knowledge proving to be useful, as there was only one prison that fits what was described, and this was what came to mind. If it was the case, then they had a very big problem on their hands. Ao narrowed his eye at the copy ninja, but refrained from saying anything. It seemed the sliver-haired Junin knew more about the Mist than most. Hopefully nothing too deep, as he was loyal to the despite the rebellion and would prefer its secrets being kept, well, secret. Mei didn't seem bothered by that. "Yes, that's the one, and if you know anything about it, you would realize why there is difficulty in freeing our men." Neiko didn't know so much of what they were talking about, But judging from Kakashi's expression, it seemed this prison was pretty difficult to deal with. Though she did wonder why she never heard of it. It just showed that despite her status as Anbu captain, she wasn't all-knowing. So rather than ask about that, she decided to focus on something else. She would question Kakashi more about it later. How many shinobi do you have captured there? Roughly 2,000 inches, answered Ao. And the guards? About half the amount of prisoners, though it's not the guards we have to worry about, it's the fortress prison itself. That got a raised eyebrow from Neko, though her mask hid it well. The gulag is a prison further down the land of water. It's surrounded by high walls all around made from the most sensitive rocks, and its foundation is composed of semi-solid lava, making it difficult to dig underneath. There is only one way in and out, and that's through TGE main gate, which is made of very dense metal, one that would require nothing short of an S-rank jutsu to make a dent on it. It's basically a war criminal prison, one meant to break its prisoners' will of being free. There was a brief pause as Ao wanted the Konoha shinobi to digest the information. Though he was pretty sure the copy ninja had some knowledge about it. The purple-haired Anbu had a serious and focused aura as expected, but blonde-haired kid just looked indifferent. Young ones these days. Without missing a beat, Mei continued for her subordinate. If the external part of the prison isn't the issue, then the internal structure is, as its atmosphere is so toxic that all the guards are required to wear gas-filtered masks to avoid choking from the air. And of all my shinobi, only I can survive in such a circumstance due to attributes peculiar to me. We don't have the resources to get masks for our people, so sending more of my shinobi for a rescue mission would be a waste at this point. I don't even know if most of the shinobi captured are alive, because just as my subordinate said, it's a prison meant to break its victims' will of freedom. Mei finished, her tone holding bitterness and disappointment. She knew she couldn't save everyone, and as much as she hoped her men were alive, she knew better, and the fact that she couldn't do anything about it made her bitter, disappointed, and angry. To add insult, Konoha had to send a small cell of its ninja for help after keeping them on hold for so long. The audacity. But she wouldn't act rashly. That didn't mean she couldn't be tough on them, in her own way of course. So, any ideas from our esteemed guests as to how we can end this war quicker? I would love to hear them? Mei asked, a little too cheery with her tone, almost like she was excited. It was fake, though the part about her surviving in such extreme conditions was a little intriguing. But at that point, it was unimportant because Kakashi doubted she would tell them anything with her current disposition. The woman was very much unhappy and angry. If they thought this mission would be difficult, then this was something else, and Tsunade had given them a short time, and to think Neko thought it was long. This could take years, that's if the rebellion didn't die off or dissolve before any substantial progress was made. So how the hell? If by some chance we were able to break into the prison and free the shinobi, not only would you forces get a boost, but the forces of the Mizukage would be crippled as well. Am I correct? Asked Naruto, seemingly out nowhere. He had been pretty quiet all through the meeting. Hey, who do you think you? One of Mei's began, until cut off by the woman in question. Something told her to hear and respond what the boy had to say, which was strange, but what did she have to lose? If you are suggesting taking out the guards while freeing the prisoners, then yes, you are right. But the fact is, it's impossible at this point, said Mei. Getting into the prison was one thing, but taking out its guards, with how toxic its environment was, well, that was impossible. Neko was about to speak up, most likely trying to cut him off, but Naruto spoke before her. Then you don't have to get involved. I will single-handedly free the prisoners and take out all the guards. Every single one of them. Once again, silence, until Ao spoke, anger very much palpable in his tone. Listen boy, this isn't a game. We have tried and attempted this for months, but to no avail. So don't come telling us that a single kid like you could succeed where more experienced shinobi have failed. We may not be the strongest of the big five, but we are still strong and have pride. So don't mock us boy. The other men in the room agreed with his statement, as what the blonde kid proposed was insulting to them and their pride. Sending 5 ninja with 2 being kids was offensive enough, but for one of the kids saying such, it was too much. Naruto was just indifferent to it all, though his 2 companions had varying expressions. Kakashi was intrigued and more suspicious of Naruto, but Neko, well, she was pissed. She was about to apologize on Naruto's behalf, of which she will later on chastise him, But once again Naruto spoke up first. I give you my word that by tomorrow morning, all your captured shinobi will be free and the gulag will be no more. Just tell me where it is, and I will do as I have said, he finished while looking straight into the eyes of Mei. She had the final say really, so it was her he needed to convince. The rest didn't matter. Enough of this insult, you have crossed th. Ow! Mei shouted, stopping the man from speaking further. Everybody out, now. Her men were confused, so were Kakashi and Neko. Was she also referring to them? Everybody out now. Get out and leave us. Yeah, she was referring to everybody except Naruto. All the inhabitants began to leave, but Neko didn't, not until Kakashi whispered something to her. Whatever it was, it seemed to make her finally leave the room with the copycat ninja, albeit with hesitance. She would have a very serious chat with the blonde when this is over. Kakashi gave a short glance at Naruto, a studying expression on his face, as if he was trying to read the blonde. Then he also left, leaving Mei and Naruto alone. Mei didn't really know why she just sent everyone out, but what she did know was that she needed to have a talk with this boy as there was something about him that, well, something that intrigued her. She was skeptical about what he proposed. After all, he was just a kid and what he was proposing was suicidal. But a part of her felt she should believe in him, or at least give him a chance to make her believe. It was a strange feeling, but maybe it was what she needed to feel, because at this point, any solution was acceptable, even one such as his. Give me one good reason why I should go with this plan of yours if one could call it such. Because to me, what you are proposing is suicide, and the last thing I would want would be to have the leaf on my head about how I was careless with their shinobi. You don't worry about the leaf, that's a minor thing. What you should concern yourself with is how you would rebuild the mist once you have won this war. A war that I will personally help you end. Those are bold words, but you still haven't answered my question. Why should I listen to you? Why should I listen to a kid such as yourself, one who I am just meeting for the very first time? Asked Mei sternly. She just wanted a straight answer. A very convincing one, because she wasn't about to start hoping for nothing. The fact that she even had the feeling to believe in this kid was really shocking. But a part of her felt it would be worth it. Besides, Konoha did produce some standout shinobi over the years, the last being the infamous Itachi Uchiha. Hopefully this kid was nothing like him. After a moment of contemplation, Naruto replied. Because I have something that no other shinobi alive possesses. And what's that? This time Naruto walked towards the woman, and once he was standing. The will to surpass all legends and become something else. The will to become a god, one that changes the world forever and makes it better. A world where you and your people can thrive without fear or looking over your shoulder as a result of past mistakes. This is my desire and I can and will make it a reality, just as I can grant what I just proposed to you, only if you are willing, of course. There was no doubt in his voice, no arrogance, no delusions in his eyes. In fact, there was nothing about his expression that made her want to doubt him. He seemed completely sure of himself, like he actually believed what he was saying. It was somewhat unnerving to see a young man act so confident, so focused. Yeah, this kid wasn't normal at all. The question was, could he back up what he claimed? Well, she had to give him a chance to prove that, and this mission seemed to be the best way to do so. She only hoped it would be the right choice. Are you out of your mind? No, absolutely not. There is no way I will allow you to go through with this whether you have that woman's approval or not. You are still under my leadership and I say no. These were the words of Neko, and despite the mask she wore, it was obvious she was pissed. No, she was livid. The fact that the auburn-haired woman would even give room for such a thing annoyed her even further, but it wasn't her place to deal with the woman. It was Naruto that was her responsibility, and what a handful he was proving to be. It's already decided. By tomorrow I will proceed with this mission regardless of whatever you say. It's not like I am risking your life or the team's. I am only risking mine, but I don't see it as such, and you shouldn't as well, answered Naruto, as cool and calm as ever. Who would believe this loud blonde-haired bundle of joy could be this, well composed? It was unreal. I already gave an order, and it's no. We are not risking you in any way, as we are to help, not take the reins of this war. So the answer is no, and you will not defy my order, or so help me I will tie you up and bind you in chains if I have to, replied Neko authoritatively, making her threat being felt by exuding a dangerous aura of chakra. Naruto remained unaffected by this. Kakashi on the other hand was just silent as he watched the exchange. What could he say really? Well, a lot, but he would rather not. Besides, when Naoko got like this, well, one had to be careful with their words. He also wanted to see how Naruto would handle this, as a part him also wanted to see Naruto in full action. Despite how suicidal this was, well, as crazy as it sounds, he believed his former student could pull it off. It was how that would be that he wanted to witness. "Aren't you gonna say anything, Kakashi-san?" requested Naoko with some frustration. She expected the copy ninja and former captain to support her, but he had just been quiet, much to her frustration. Perhaps having Tenzo, the pink-haired girl, around would have been better. "You should listen to her, Naruto. She was put in charge of this mission for a reason, and as such you must obey and respect her. Even if Mei-san has given you the go-ahead, which is quite ironic considering she looked down on you earlier, she only looks out for her people and their welfare, not yours. So listen to Naoko and stand down," Kakashi said, trying to reason with the blonde. Naruto just stared at them both, not uttering a word or giving a response. He was completed unreadable, and to veterans such as both of them, Kakashi and Naoko couldn't read him. Then, he began waking away, and kept walking, seemingly no destination in sight as he walked past the nearby rebel shinobi, ignoring them completely. Naoko was about to call him back, but Kakashi stopped her by placing a hand on her shoulder, which made her look at the man angrily and shrugging off his hand. Her anger was pretty obvious even with her mask on. "Just let him be for now, Naoko. I don't believe he will do anything reckless, so just let him be." "Why didn't you speak up earlier?" "Because it was necessary." "What exactly does that mean?" Kakashi kept quiet, contemplating how to answer that question. Then, he replied, staring in the direction that Naruto walked through. "Naruto is no longer the same as of 3 years ago, and for that reason he has to be dealt with differently. Trying to order him around or force him into doing something doesn't seem like it will work anymore. We need to be smarter and more careful while dealing with him," finished the man, allowing his female companion to process all he had said. She had to admit, the Junin was right as she remembered the words of the Hokage. "Keep Naruto in check, but do so carefully. Don't give him reason to mistrust you or anyone else, because as much as it pains me to say it, Naruto is a flight risk and we need to prevent that from manifesting. This is your mission, so do not fail." Yeah, the Hokage was right, the blonde was a flight risk. That was why she sent Tenzo with her as backup, just in case of any incident. So she had to be more careful with the blonde, and thankfully Kakashi was here to help her out. This a part of her felt his presence wouldn't help much in dealing with blonde. Hopefully the boy wouldn't do anything reckless. But a part of her felt she was hoping in vain. "You catch up with Tenzo and your student. I have something to do," said Naoko as she began walking in the same direction Naruto did. She was gonna keep an eye on him. Kakashi rose an eyebrow at that, but chose not to comment or stop her. He mentally sighed at the situation as several thoughts crossed his mind. This was gonna be a long mission, he thought as he went looking for the others. Unknown to him, the mission was gonna be much shorter than expected, especially after what was to come. The next day. It was a new day as well as a continuation of the ongoing civil war of the most. But unlike previous days, the rebellion had in their midst guests of sorts from another village. These individuals were meant to serve as potential saviors, people who would help end the war quicker, but for the rebels, these guests didn't live up to expectations, most especially due to their numbers. How would just 5 shinobi help end a war such as this? It was incredulous, insulting and even downgrading as even children were part of these guests. If the hype of having the legendary copycat ninja amongst them was motivating, well, the small backup as well as presence of children destroyed it completely. Hopefully the children in question wouldn't slow them down, though one of them seemed to be proving her worth with the provision of medical expertise to the less qualified medics amongst the rebels. But she was just one person, and it wouldn't be enough in a war like this one. The rebels needed something more, and that was why an important meeting was going on. Mei was busy having a very serious discussion with some of her men, trying to iron out a few details and plans, but she was interrupted by the unexpected arrival of a certain purple-haired masked ninja. "Halt," one of the men ordered. But Naoko ignored him, making her presence known rather forcefully. She wasn't in a good mood at all, and her aura reflected that. The man who stopped her with a few others reached for whatever weapon they had. But Naoko just ignored all of that and spoke up, as she wasn't here to fight, but to talk. "Can I have a private word with you, Mei-san?" she asked politely. Mei just looked around, taking in the expressions of her men, and then, she looked at Neko with narrowed eyes. I believe you can see I am busy. It's urgent. Mei only narrowed her eyes further at that. What could be so important that this woman would interrupt her during an important meeting? With reluctance and annoyance, she acquiesced. Very well. Gentlemen, continue with the meeting. With that said, she walked away with Neko, heeding her request for privacy, but being smart enough to walk too far from her men. This woman wasn't her shinobi, and she didn't trust her. After walking some distance away, she asked, "So, what is it? Where is Naruto Uzumaki? Excuse me, where is Naruto Uzumaki?" Neko asked more forcefully. How would I know that? Of course you would. After all, it was you who was willing to let him single-handedly take on an entire prison fortress without consulting us first, especially me, his superiors. So I ask again, where is Naruto Uzumaki? Neko wasn't playing around when she asked this, as she was pissed. Mei was confused, very much confused, and very much angry. The nerve of this woman to question her like this, but as much as she wanted to put this woman in her place, what the woman said rang in her ear. Letting him single-handedly take on an entire prison fortress. She didn't authorize any of that. She didn't even know who Naruto Uzumaki was until just now. So that was the name of the blonde kid. Well, his surname did stand out considering that most Uzumaki were dead, but the fact was, she didn't authorize him to do anything. You are very much mistaken, as I did not let the boy take on anything. Fine, he did try to convince me, but as much as I wanted to believe he could do it, I had my doubts. So I told him that I would get back to him with the rest of you being present as well. After all, you did come here as a team, albeit a small one. As much as Mei wanted to be angry and react as such, she decided to just be truthful and plain, as there was no need to promote any animosity. Though the question was, why would this woman think she sent the boy on such a mission? The boy wouldn't be so reckless as to go alone, would he? Did he even know where the prison was located? As Mei had such thoughts, Neko only had one in mind, and quite angrily. That little shit, was what she thought, and justifiably so. After all, she was just played by a person several years her junior and nearly got her in trouble for it by challenging the rebel leader. Regardless of wherever he was, when she found him, she would. Boom! Upon the explosive sound being heard, there was a great quake that followed, albeit a short and less damaging one, causing both women to stumble. What was that? Was the question on both women's mind, though for different reasons. One for fear of an invasion of the rebellion camp, and the other for fear that something horribly wrong was gonna happen. Well, soon they would find out if their fears are justified. Moments earlier, you sure you want to do this, Kit? You could still wait a few days before doing anything. Wait, doing what? I didn't exactly come here as a tourist. I'm just saying, Kit, because aside from doing this, you would have to deal with the possible wrath of two deadly women. All the reason why to go through with this. I do look forward to challenges. Well, I wouldn't say that it would just be a challenge, because I remember humans saying something like hell having no fury like a woman scorned. So I would suggest you rather think about that carefully. Yeah, his host was most likely in deep shit with what that statement implied. It would be fun to watch, really. If the scorn of a woman is as such, then my will for great change will definitely quench it. Enemy or presumed ally, everyone and everything that can hinder my plans will be destroyed. It's as simple as that, said Naruto, a focused expression on his face and countenance being deadly serious. That's dark, Kit, even for you. That's rich coming from a being that declares himself as an embodiment of hatred. If that's not dark enough, then I don't know what is, Kurama. Upon hearing that, despite his arrogance, the QB chose to keep quiet and let his host do as he pleased. Despite the drastic change in attitude over the years, his host was pretty stubborn. But the good thing was that he was clear-headed about it. Besides a big show, courtesy of his host was about to start, one that he would very much like to pay great attention to. Naruto didn't even bother to engage in further conversation, as he had something to do that would require full concentration. Upon sensing a significant amount of chakra ahead, he stopped walking and extended his senses further in order to confirm his target. Yeah, he was at the right place, and a good distance away from his target, something that he would need in order to prepare his jutsu. The surrounding mist may be effective at affecting one's sense of direction, but it as well helped conceal his presence, as he expelled chakra from himself to merge with that of his surrounding, making any nearby sensor think he was part of the mist. He already knew where to find his target anyway, but this was the first time he had actually tracked it down. It took a great deal of control over one's chakra, especially one as dense as his, but the years were fruitful in that regard, and so he was capable of hiding in plain sight just by merging his chakra with his environment if need be, allowing him to disappear. Well, he wouldn't be able to do that anymore, as he would need to focus all his chakra at this point to perform the jutsu he had in mind. The chakra signatures he felt weren't friendlies, and if they were caught up in the jutsu he was about to unleash, then it wouldn't matter. After all, he was still gonna kill them all. It would have been easier to just bring everything down, but there were some individuals amongst the chakra signatures that needed to be saved and kept alive. So Naruto knew he was gonna have to move in step by step. With just a thought, 2 shadow clones appeared silently, and without even saying a word, they went into action, as they both knew what to do. The ability to will shadow clones into existence without hand signs was pretty amazing, but Naruto just saw it as a necessity, one that almost no one would expect, and the possibilities that came with its application in battle were pretty deadly. The 2 clones began gathering large amounts of chakra, and in almost no time a familiar technique sprung to life, rotating just as it always does, albeit it was bigger than its original, bigger than what most would create as regards chakra manipulation. But Naruto was doing just that, or at least his clones. With a giant Rasengan activated by the clones, they pumped more chakra into the technique, making it get bigger and bigger and bigger to the point that the very earth and its surrounding were greatly affected. The speedy rotation of the enlarging technique caused heavy winds, with even debris and rocks flying around, and it just kept getting bigger, creating a vortex of heavy winds. This was not an ordinary technique. No, this was the pure power of chakra manipulation mixed with nature, and unfortunately for the target of the technique, it would be its destruction along with the lives close to it. While the technique was created and the effect it caused its surroundings was going on, Naruto just stood there, his eyes closed and completely still despite how close he was to it and all the heavy winds and debris attracted. It was his technique after all, so he could deal with the effects. Upon getting to its biggest size, the 2 shadow clones, having exhausted their chakra, dispelled, but just before the giant technique could dispel or explode, Naruto took control over it, both hands covered in chakra, steadying the technique, his eyes still closed as he did that. When he opened them, his eyes glowed pure gold, great power radiating off them. For a moment, the world stood still, everything was quiet, and then, his next words would shake everything. Sage Art, Almighty Rasengan Cannon. The gate technique was sent at speeds too fast for its size and with a loud boom, picking up debris and causing the ground to shatter and break apart as it passed through. The moment it hit its target, the world shook exponentially. Boom! The explosion caused was so strong that it caused a brief shake of the earth, and it was most likely that the seismic effect would have been felt, even for miles. The amount of dust mixed with smoke would be visible for all to see, but that didn't matter, because the destruction had only just begun. The gulag, a prison that was regarded as impenetrable, had been breached, and in a few minutes it would become nothing but rubble, a memory of the past. This war would get closer to its conclusion, and most importantly, the tale of the new god, Naruto Uzumaki, would begin. With no time to waste, Naruto with a boom, leapt forward, causing the ground underneath to crack. It was time to get his hands dirty, but it was necessary. The bloodshed had just begun. That's all for now. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments.